Good evening. This is Radio Free Mormon. What does Mormonism have to do with unidentified flying objects, both historically and today? More specifically, is the LDS Church right now working hand in hand with the United States government to retrieve crashed UFOs and extraterrestrials, and then reverse engineering the alien technology for our purposes, all in a shadowy, high-level U.S. governmental agency called the Legacy Program? You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into Mormonism Live.
All right. Welcome, folks. Welcome, everyone, especially those joining us for the first time. Many of you are likely here because of your interest in UAPs, UFOs, in the growing discussion around government secrecy. And you picked the right episode of Mormonism Live to tune into. We need to set the stage with some key Mormon history, and that's where we come in. We're the experts at that. Mormonism has a long and bizarre connection to extraterrestrials, and understanding that history will make tonight's discoveries even more clear. Joining us is the Backyard Professor, whose channel has recently gone deep down the hole of aliens and UFOs. He'll help us explore the Mormon UFO connection, give his thoughts on tonight's discoveries. Like, subscribe, comment below. With that, I'm Bill Reel, and I turn it over to my esteemed co-host, Radio Free Mormon.
Hello, boys. I'm back. And so is Carrie Schertz, the Backyard Professor. How are you doing, Carrie?
I'm doing good. Thanks, you guys. Good to see you again.
It's so great to see you. Is the food holding out in your bunker?
Yes, I have a full 3-year supply like the prophet has counseled, and I'm doing good.
You know, they can see around corners after all. Now, it's been a long time since you've been on the show, and I wanted to say welcome and congratulations, because phenomenal things are happening over there on your channel. You took a turn some months ago to go from talking about things related more to Mormonism to things related to UFOs and extraterrestrials. And how long ago was that? What made you do it? And how is it going?
It's going good. My wife, in her recovery from cancer, had to find something to do, right, while I was at work. So she began watching the UFO videos she started out by watching videos on Cro-Magnon man and the Neanderthals. And then she found some stuff on the UFOs and she started watching them. And periodically over the last year or so, I'd come home and she'd say, "Hey, I watched a pretty cool video. You ought to check this out." And oh, yeah. And she finally convinced me, "Oh, sit down. You're going to watch this." Okay, yeah. And I watched the video and I was very pleasantly surprised. I said, "Oh, wow, that was quite deep. That was interesting." And I did that for a few months. And then one of the great voices in the ufology, I guess is how they pronounce it.
Yes.
I've been calling it UFology, and people have been yelling at me. So ufology is the great Danny Sheehan. And he is a lawyer for the public in the United States. He's a public defender, very prominent. He described in one of his episodes the discussion that Lieutenant Colonel Corso had with a living alien. And it blew my mind because Corso was very high in the United States military. He was not one to mamby-pamby around and mess around. And that kind of caught my attention. And I thought, you know what? In the discussion of Mormonism, the UFOs are missing. I mean, yeah, it's touched on periodically, but there's no real analysis. And so I intended to take it that direction. And I stuck my finger in, and it pulled me all the way down the rabbit hole. So I periodically get on the Mormon aspect of this, but the UFO thing is, I just recently had the world famous and world renowned Steve Bassett on my live program just 3 weeks ago, I believe. And been working on it for 50 years. He's absolutely tremendously important in the whole UFO movement for disclosure. And he said that this is the most important question and subject for humanity. And so I've been going gung-ho ever since.
I'm presuming that Corso was the one speaking English in the communication.
No, they both were.
Right. He was speaking English, and so was the alien.
The alien was not speaking words. He was telepathically communicating. Now, I am still wrapping my mind around this. I was raised on classic science, man. This subject has just opened my eyes to a wealth of information and ideas. And yes, woo-woo. I'm with you. Everyone in the audience, I'm with you. This is woo-woo bullshit. But the aliens don't give a damn about our definition of true science versus false science or woo-woo. They communicate with their consciousness. That's how they communicate. And it's bizarre. I'm still wrapping my mind around that. But that's one of the intriguing mysteries of it.
Well, in many ways, the science fiction authors of the 50s and 60s and even the 40s were the prophets as far as science goes, predicting things that would come to pass, including telepathic communications.
Yeah, well, I mean, the military, the U.S. military, since Roswell, 1947. Now, this is before you and I even are FM. This is older than you and I are, my friend.
Bill's that's when I got here.
Bill's a young 47. They remote view, and they have been studying, the military has been studying remote viewing, which from the classic, I mean, Carl Sagan, James Randi, come on, get real. Remote viewing is BS. The military has been practicing it now for 50 years because the Russians, the word is the Russians have crashed UFO vehicles also, and they are practicing remote viewing. Our U.S. military cannot afford to let someone else get a secret weapon that might work. And so they've been at it for 50 years, both countries. So
is it true? Is it true that one of the reasons that one of the early UFOs crashed was because of radar?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, they are saying now that the UAP, they call them UAP, unidentified.
I know, aerial phenomenon. And that's the problem. We've got a perfectly good word with UFO and ufology.
Well,
you put UAP in front of it and you've got WAPology. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I've stuck with UFOs, and my audience has been very appreciative of that. So it's like they're calling the aliens, the beings now. They're calling them NHI instead of aliens, and
or ETs,
non-human intelligence, NHI. So I mean, it's everyone keeps trying to be politically correct, and I just keep saying, will you just show me the evidence, please? And make sure.
I know.
Now,
feelings are worried about hurting with this.
Hey, thank you, Bill Reel. That is an important item here. That's the 2017. Actually, it happened in 2004, but it came out.
Tic Tac, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. That's a Tic Tac by what's his name? David Fravor.
Yeah,
one of the pilots, the Air Force pilots who captured that. And the reason it's blurry and dark and black and white and out of focus and fuzzy, that's all fake and stuff. Bullshit. This is military radar, man. This is as sophisticated as you can get. So,
right.
Well, I tell you what, Carrie, can you tell us, we got some things we want to get through to get to the Mormon angle as it relates to UFOs. And I think a lot of people will be interested in that, both on the Mormon side and on the UFO side.
Sure.
But can you tell us what your most watched episode is and what it's about?
Oh, yeah. That would have been my response to Cliff Long. He is a gentleman who claims he put together a computer program that was able to utilize all of the information on the internet in order for him to make predictions. And he predicted that on December 3rd of last year, there would be what they call a melee. That is, there is going to be a battle of UFOs versus UFOs and UFOs versus jets from our human military up in the sky. Well, he put a December 3rd date on when this melee would begin. And it can potentially go all the way through, they've stressed it. He did mention January through March. Some people,
it's a good thing.
April, etc. But I caught wind of that before December 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a podcast describing and sharing his ideas and saying, this gentleman says December 3rd, we're going to begin to see a battle in the skies, and I am going to hold him to it. I don't believe it.
So you're saying UFOs are going to be fighting against UFOs, or what he's saying?
What's that?
UFOs will be fighting against UFOs?
Yes.
Is this like the Crips and the Bloods?
Well, I don't know. He said that part of it could be because our military has made vehicles that look a lot like UFOs. They probably won't have the capability, but they're moving forward to try to get, that's called reverse engineering, and they're trying to reverse engineer the UFOs. So who knows what it is, but when he said December 3rd, there was a melee.
Mm-hmm.
The funniest thing about this video is I think it has now about 420,000 views. The reason that it does, in my opinion, one, it was a prediction, and he put an exact date on it. You never do that, not in religion, not in ufology. When you do that, you're screwed, right?
Well, that brings up the point, Kerry, because I've got to think, this sounds an awful lot like Second Coming language.
Yes, sure. Sure.
And that's ramping up in Mormon circles too right now.
Absolutely. And the reason, in my opinion, everything is ramping up. Now, there's another gentleman, Farsight, Courtney Brown, who is a remote viewer, and he has an entire group of remote viewers, and they are claiming to communicate with the ETs on a monthly basis, and the ETs are laying out their ground plan for full disclosure to humanity here on the world, right? So they've been communicating for quite a while with them. And he says that the New Jersey drones, I mean, everybody heard about it for months and months and months.
And then nothing.
Yeah. Well, and they're over in the UK, and they've gone down to Utah now. Hill Air Force Base heard about it. No. So this UFO, they're down in Texas, they're everywhere. And Courtney Brown came along and he said, well, what we're seeing is drones. The UFOs can shapeshift into drones, which I have trouble. The shape-shifting thing, I have seen orbs change shape in videos claiming to be UAPs. I'm not totally convinced. I want to try to keep it as real as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I call a spade a spade. If the video isn't good enough, if the photograph looks doctored, if there's something wrong with it, I always say so. I'm not going to hype this up. I am not going to sensationalize it. I want to see the real evidence. So Courtney Brown said, well, the UFOs told him in December, because of the response of humanity, that they thought it was just human drones. Now, there's no question in my mind that the military did put up their own drones up there. So when they
United States military.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. The U.S.
Wanted to clarify that.
Yes. To confuse people. That's one of the ideas. So, but they don't talk about the orbs. People have also been seeing these light orbs, what they call plasmoids, which is not as far off as you think. There's a new book on that I've reviewed, Robert Temple, A New Science of Heaven, where he talks about the importance of plasma in the universe. So anyway.
Kerry, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, one more second. Courtney
Brown
says the UAP, the aliens have said, we're going to send bigger ships by the end of January. Well, we're in February. I haven't seen any news items at all. I personally would like to see those bigger ships.
We're going to need a bigger ship.
That's why I've got these night vision binoculars that I'm going to be able to start watching the sky myself in case bigger ships show up, right? But they haven't yet. So
Those are cool binoculars, Carrie. What's the magnification on those?
Yeah, it zooms from 6 to 36 and it's by 50. They're a Luna optics and they are a night vision with infrared, which is a short range. It'll go out about maybe 1,000 to 1,100 yards. But the infrared will signal the UAP, I've been told. And if they start flashing back, then hot damn, I've got something. So anyway, that's basically where we're at. Everybody's making predictions. Now, Jake Barber, the newest whistleblower on Ross Coulthart, whom I called out because I was disappointed with the caliber and quality of the evidence, and I got clobbered. I had 500 people unsubscribe from me, for Pete's sake, because they said, Ross Coulthart is the real deal. I'm not saying he's not the real deal. I'm saying if you're going to claim the ability to video and see, you have all the equipment, you are buying hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment. I can only afford an $800 pair of binoculars, night binoculars. You're claiming you have the equipment, then by damn, you better show me better stuff than what you did in that documentary. I did not say Ross Coulthart is a fake. I said I'm unsatisfied with his evidence. And I've always promised my audience, if I'm unsatisfied, I'm saying so. If I'm satisfied, wonderful. I've done some videos that way too. And then I get kicked in the teeth from the critics on that. So I can't please anybody sometimes. And that's right. The nature of the beast. So
let me make three quick comments, okay? Because first off, you've responded about the second coming and the similarity between that and Christianity. And it seems to be this idea, I don't know, that when humanity is sensed to be in turmoil and there's a lot of disruption in the world, people look for a savior from outside to come in and rescue. And I don't know if that's the same impulse. I'm just throwing it out there as an idea. The other thing you just said there, number two, is about what you just said about this evidence. Well, where's the evidence? See, this is something in Mormonism, I'll let everybody know. There's a distinct lack of evidence in Mormonism. It has very strong truth claims that should be demonstrable scientifically. But every time science is applied to it, every time science is applied to it, it falls apart. That's the problem. So classic instance is that Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, claimed to have received gold plates from an angel. Technically, the angel showed him where they were buried. Then he gave them to him. Okay. But he got gold plates from an angel, right? And then he dictated what was on the gold plates through a process, spiritual in nature. And that's the Book of Mormon. But the gold plates went back with the angel. See, we don't have the gold plates. We don't have the evidence. We don't have anything to test or look at except for the translation. So that's an instance too that I see as similar to what you're talking about. If you say you have evidence, show me the evidence, because it sounds like the evidence that should be there isn't there. And that makes me think maybe something's up. It sounds a little bit suspicious, right? The third thing I want to say about Mormonism, and then we're going to go all whole hog on Mormonism, okay, is that Mormonism, we follow what we read in the Old Testament, especially, as being the way that's described for God to communicate to his people, which is usually he picks one guy who's going to be the top dog, the big banana, the head honcho, and God's going to talk to him. And that's the prophet. Every now and again in the Old Testament, you might have had a woman do it. So far in the LDS Church, no Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, female prophet or even apostle. They're all male still. So I'm saying he, all right? And God talks to him, and then he gives that message to everybody else. And basically, we got to take his word for it. You know, we believe strongly. We got a testimony that that man who's the president of the church, the LDS Church, speaks with God. God speaks with him, and he tells us what God wants us to do. I see a potential similarity in that role with what you're talking and describing about the remote viewers.
May I add one more gentleman to this mix then?
Yeah.
Because the secular side of the Mormon prophet in the ufology world is definitely a gentleman named Chris Bledsoe. who wrote a book of his experience, UFO of God. Now, he is the singular most tested experiencer of all the scientific establishment, of all of the government establishment, of all of the military establishment, and they cannot find anything wrong with his story. He claims that the lady came out of one of those white orbs and told him in 2026, when the star Regulus in Leo is lined up with the gaze of the Sphinx in Egypt, a new knowledge will come forward that will help mankind. But between now and then, and this was back quite a few years back, and he wrote about this and put it in print before it happened. So we know that's what he says he heard. And so we've got a year and a half or so before 2026 shows up. Now, I did some research on when that alignment happens. He says potentially around Easter. I think the scientific lineup is more in line at the fall equinox or sometime in the fall, but 2026 is the year. Again, another what I would consider to be claim with somewhat, not an exact day, but somewhat of a time scale.
Right.
And Jake Barber, the new whistleblower that Ross Coulthart interviewed, says his private group is retrieving UAP that have been downed, or that they say psionically, telepathically, they claim they can have the UFOs come to them and perhaps have an exchange of technology. And he says by the end of this year, by the end of 2025, these guys will have either an alien craft or some alien tech that they can show that this stuff is real. So this kind of information coming out is what is the driving engine of everyone saying, whoa, it's building up. It's getting tense. It's getting more tense.
I don't know if you've been keeping track of, that looks like a jet. I don't know if you've been keeping track of, a lot of Mormons are really getting into this whole idea about Jesus coming back like the evangelicals used to.
Yeah.
But they're really getting into it. And they are looking, many of them are looking at 2025. This is going to be the year.
Yes,
you're talking about 2026 over there. My question for you is, what happens if Jesus comes first and then the UFOs show up?
The UFOs have told some people that they created Jesus. So it doesn't matter who comes first.
They're so full of themselves, aren't they?
Chicken or the egg? No.
Isn't
flying across the universe and they get
like I say, this stuff is a mind either expanding or I'm still trying to wrap my mind around so much. And of course, everyone's got stories, man, just like the Mormons and their miracles. So
absolutely. Well, let's talk about some of those, okay?
Sure. Absolutely.
So let's go ahead. Now, these are the UFOs through the ages, artwork that people today look at and see UFOs or perhaps evidence of UFOs. You can see some there. There's a UFO as I think that's coming from heaven and shining some kind of a light down. Do you know what that's a picture of or a painting of, Carrie or Bill?
I don't. I know these are religious pieces of art, but I don't know what particular story in the scriptures this is pointing to.
Okay. But over there, now this other circle to the right of it, you can see what looks like an orbed or elliptical shape, perhaps a saucer shape up there in the sky. To the right of that, there's nothing in the sky, but there is this weird alien thing, which is actually, I think, supposed to be a demon. That's probably St. George and the dragon with a face on his butt. Can you see that? His tail is actually a nose. Yep. And then down directly below that face on the butt, you've got another circle, which is circling something in the sky in a crucifixion piece of artwork. And perhaps something similar, if you look directly to the left, all the way across the triptych, it appears there's another one there that we're catching part of. And here on the left, it's hard to miss that thing. That's a big old thing up there. I don't know if that's a beehive or what, but it's something that's floating in the air, apparently. Over here on the right, I am not exactly sure, unless it's the cloud shape. Do you think it's the cloud shape there, Carrie, to the right of this picture? This is the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist. Obviously, this is not produced by a Mormon because they're doing the baptism all wrong.
Cloud
Mormons
looks
believe
like
in
it is.
baptism by immersion, folks. So I don't think it's the dove, the Holy Ghost coming down in the form of a dove on Jesus. I think it might be that cloud over there. See
Yeah.
that cloud?
Yeah. It looks like a spaceship, doesn't it?
It
That is
does.
interesting.
You know,
And that's the one on the left is the same one that we started with. And once again, I'm not sure what that is. Someone is bowing down to someone else. Anyway, but here on the right, I love this one because this is a picture of Madonna and the baby and a little angel, a little cherub with the baby Jesus. But over Mary's left shoulder, you see something in the air that looks like some kind of a UAP. And the thing I love the most about this, the reason this is my favorite one, is because almost directly below and a little bit to the right of that UAP, you can see the small figure of a man who has his hand up, shading his eyes, and he's looking up at the UFO because the artist wants to draw a little bit more focus to it than what it would otherwise have without the man looking at it. So we're going to go from there. But Carrie, did you have any comments about those pieces of art? We were just using those to bridge to this. But if you have anything to say, or you too, Bill, please.
Yeah. I do want to say, I look at stuff like this and I think people are just picking out what they think they see. They're trying to, if you already are looking for UFOs and you look at the art and you go like, well, that looks kind of like a ship. I, for one, I'll just say up front, I, for one, believe in the whole alien thing as phenomenon. I see the Grush guy. We'll talk about him later. The military officer who's testified before the Senate and different government committees. He just seems to me to be a sincere guy. And you have lots of people within the U.S. government giving some degree of credibility to this and saying that it needs to be explored further and that there are agencies who are withholding information. And I know that among the three of us, even, there's going to be differences of opinion about this topic. What I think is fun about this, and we're about to get into it, is that there is some history in Mormonism that has been connected to extraterrestrials, to UFOs, and we're about to get into that next. And I think what makes this conversation interesting, and you'll see it towards the end of the show, is that there was something that was said in the public arena that prompted us going into this topic. It's not that we just want to talk about UFOs and aliens. It was that there was something that came out in the modern moment that I think at least deserves a question asked. And so we'll sort of get there, but I think it's important that for the folks who watch this video who are interested in aliens or UFOs, UAPs, all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of Mormon history that we sort of have to set up. And then for the folks who are Mormon or post-Mormon, you're out of the church, hang on as we get towards the second half of the show here. I think there's a couple of things that will be very interesting to those who are sort of taking a deeper look at Mormonism. So RFM.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there is more and more of a collapsing between the realms of UFO, ufology, and religion. A number of the things you're saying remind me of religion, specifically of Mormonism, but it's not exclusive to Mormonism. Some of the things we'll talk about now are exclusive to Mormonism. So first off, there we have the wonderful picture of the mothership from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I was there in the theater opening night, just so you know.
That looks like the city of Enoch returning.
It does, doesn't it? See? Good point. By the way, here we are. Okay.
There you go.
Dr. J. Allen Hynek. He had a cameo in the movie. Very important UFO researcher. First worked for the government, discounting UFO sightings and explaining them away. Then became convinced that there was a certain number, a small number, but a number of these sightings that he really wasn't comfortable explaining away by conventional means. And so that's why I got the pipe tonight in honor of Dr. J. Allen Hynek. He wrote a couple of books, probably more than that. I read one of them, but they're so similar. I think I read the Hynek UFO report. It's been about 25 years since I was into this. But the UFO Experience is another book that he wrote, and I understand that you're reading that now. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got it. It's a new cover with an updated forward. But yeah,
very good. Yeah, exciting stuff. He's a scientist. Okay, back off, man. I'm a scientist. And so is J. Allen Hynek. And it's very interesting. Similarly to me going from being a true believing Mormon who was an apologist for the church, right? To seeing the error of those apologetics and going to the other side, he did a similar thing, I think, vis-a-vis the U.S. government, working for them, and then seeing, yeah, this isn't holding up, and then going to the other side of the equation or the other position because he felt the evidence was more in support of it, as do I. Okay, so everybody, let's start off. Mormons believe in life on other worlds. That's an unusual belief for a Christian church to have. I know some people say Mormons aren't Christian. We'll bypass that. They believe in Jesus Christ and consider him their savior in a certain way. So therefore, I'll just say Christian church, I don't know of any churches that as an article of faith, really, as a part of their scripture, have it down that there is life on other worlds. And this is from Doctrine and Covenants, section 76, the vision that Joseph Smith had along with another fellow, Sidney Rigdon, back in 1832. And they saw these different worlds. And this is what it says. Joseph Smith speaking, actually, Joseph Smith and Sidney Rigdon. And now after the many testimonies which have been given of him, this is the testimony last of all which we give of him, that he lives. This is Jesus. For we saw him even on the right hand of God. And we heard the voice bearing record that he, Jesus, is the only begotten of the Father. In verse 24, that by him and through him and of him, the worlds, plural, are and were created, and the inhabitants thereof, of the worlds, are begotten sons and daughters unto God. So, as a part of their religion, it's part of the scripture, Mormons believe in life on other worlds. It's not even an open question, really, for a believing Mormon. And you're already halfway there as far as finding a natural fit for a group of people who belong to a certain religion to believe in UFOs. We believe they're out there. Now we just got to believe they got here. All right. Now, let me...
Can't hear you.
Hear you.
There you go.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you blanked out there for a second.
All right. Thank you. I was okay. And that's all you were saying. You didn't want to say anything in addition?
Yeah, I do. Just real briefly, there is another proposal that the aliens have been on this earth for millions of years. They're actually been here quite a lot longer than any of us. I mean, the idea that there's people in other worlds, but it is so extremely difficult to travel through space. They couldn't have done it conventionally the way we send rockets right now. And there's all kinds of really weird, interesting theories on maybe they folded space or found a way to fly faster than light and stuff like that, none of which is real yet. Mm-hmm. But the other proposal is they live under the ocean and they've been here a lot longer than we have. So just letting you know.
Thank you. They really are under the sea.
They really are under the sea. The Little Mermaid cartoon is getting us ready for the little UFO.
That's great. Now, everybody out there, part of Mormon history, and an important part of Mormon history, is in 1823, when Joseph Smith says that an angel of God appeared to him in his bedroom at night and came back and forth all night long. It was crazy, believe me, but he had a lot to say. And every time he'd come back to say something, he'd have to repeat everything he said the last time he was there. You know, this is an accurate description, and even describing it, it sounds crazy. However, it was done, I'm sure, so that Joseph Smith would remember because he wasn't taking notes. Now, the interesting thing is, in 1838, which is a number of years later, but Joseph Smith is writing down a certain version. He'd written it down or talked about it before, but this is the official version. And how it is he describes this angel appearing and disappearing, coming and going from his bedroom. Hey, Bill, could you read this for us?
Yeah, absolutely. While I was thus in the act of calling upon God, and again, yeah, this is for those who have no backstory about Mormonism. Joseph Smith claims to translate a sacred book called the Book of Mormon by the gift and power of God, and he claims he got that book under the direction of this angel Moroni, which you just mentioned. And this is one of the early events in Mormonism that just sets up the foundations of the church for Joseph to have access to these plates and to translate this book. And so he says, while I was thus in the act of calling upon God, I discovered a light appearing in my room, which continued to increase until the room was lighter than at noonday, when immediately a personage appeared at my bedside, standing in the air, for his feet did not touch the floor.
So stopping right there, the first thing to note is the light appears first, all right? There's a light that appears in the room that increases, and then all of a sudden there's a being standing there or floating there. It's above the floor. The really interesting part is the detail that's given when this being departs Joseph Smith's bedroom, and that is verse 43, Bill.
After this communication, I saw the light in the room begin to gather immediately around the person of him who had been speaking to me, and it continued to do so until the room was again left dark, except just around him, when instantly I saw, as it were, a conduit open right up into heaven. And he ascended till he entirely disappeared, and the room was left as it had been before the heavenly light had made its appearance.
So what is it about this conduit that appears? And apparently in this conduit, the angel goes up and through the roof, through the ceiling, apparently. And then disappears. This is how the angel appears and disappears from Joseph Smith's room. And 25, 30 years ago, when I was into this, I wondered, was there some kind of a UFO in a stationary orbit over the Smith farmhouse at the time this was going on, that the angel is coming down from and going back up to? Any thoughts about that, Carrie?
Yeah, there are accounts of abductees who do indicate that the beings will come right through walls and they'll come right through the ceiling. And so that no longer seems so ridiculous, silly, and stupid anymore in Joseph Smith's description. There are also experiencers who have said, I was in the bedroom with my brother and my cousin, and they never saw the light, and they never knew I was abducted out through the ceiling.
Well, what Carrie's referring to there.
And that has been one of the criticisms. Now, I'm not defending Joseph Smith.
It's okay. I just want to make it clear to the audience. What Carrie's referencing there is something I hadn't mentioned, which is that in his room, he's got two brothers with him in the same bed. It isn't this big house that's on the screen, the meme. It's a small log cabin that they're living in 1823. He's got two brothers. They're crammed in there. It's a small room. This angel appears, talks all night long. It's very bright. Apparently it's noisy. And then he leaves. The brothers never wake up. That's what you're talking about, right? But
now that we understand, based on what the experiencers, and there are thousands of them, John Mack interviewed a lot of them in his book, and now there's a major college movement of a program talking to the experiencers. Just because the angel Moroni was talking to Joseph Smith doesn't mean it was out loud like you and I are talking right now. The aliens can communicate with you telepathically and put images in your mind as well as words, and that is exactly how Joseph Smith described that. He showed me where the gold plates were hidden in the hill.
Yeah. He gives them the entire image, apparently.
So maybe in our state of ignorance and in our self-vaunted certitude of scientific credibility, maybe we're the ones that are actually wrong after all. There's no question, and I'm not defending the reality of UFOs. I believe in them. I will see. So far, the evidence is not that impressive to me. That's why I'm trying to search for my own. But the idea that they can come through solid objects is now understood to be part of the witness's description of this. The idea that they can communicate with us telepathically is an actual description of this now. So the aliens don't give a damn about our human definition of what is scientific and what's not. They'll communicate with us how they damn well want to, and it's telepathically. That's how this works.
What you're talking about is also appears in the Bible in the New Testament in Luke chapter 24, where the 11 remaining apostles after Jesus' death are gathered in an upper room in a closed room. It makes a point of saying
And
it's a closed
Jesus-
room and all of a sudden Jesus is there.
Jesus is there.
And that's why they think he's a
how
ghost.
do you
They think
realize
he's a
that?
ghost and they make him eat stuff
Yeah, that's one
in
of the
order to prove that he has a body.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, that's one of the main atheist arguments against the resurrection. The other one is Jesus going up into heaven. How laughably naive and stupid. Now we know that the UFOs, based on the testimony of the experiencers, some of them have been elevated up through shafts of light into those UFO craft. Levitation, ascension. We couch it in religious terms. They're simply trying to describe what happened, and how
Let me ask you
can
something,
you?
Gary.
So
Gary,
that's
I got to ask you this, okay?
Sure.
We're talking religion and UFOs. And I'm
Yeah.
bringing up mostly the religious stuff, and you're talking about the
Yeah.
UFOs, so I know you know the religion just as well as I do, okay?
Sure.
How likely do you think it is that this is all part? I mean, we see the same phenomenon in both, time after time after time, even down to details. How likely is it that all of this springs from the same human impulse, but is updated according to technological advances?
Now that is one of the main contentions of an absolute superb college professor, Diane Pasulka, who is very well known in ufology. There is an updating based on our culture of the interaction because, well, it's like that picture you showed, RFM, just a few minutes ago, in that picture with Mary, and there's that weird basket or ball or whatever. The Hopis described the Kachina dolls, taking them up into the sky on a flying shield, a round flying shield. Now, one of their weapons of defense is a shield, of course, spears and bows and arrows. So they described this thing as a shield, not a saucer. So they're just culturally describing perhaps the same phenomenon. Ezekiel described it as a wheel within a wheel. Chris Bledsoe's orbs that he does have on his Instagram, he's got lots of videos, shows this idea of how I can easily imagine a wheel within a wheel, the way the orb's light shifts back and forth within the orb. So all of our prejudgments of these things might be, quite frankly, just uninformed.
Yes, that's it.
And I'm not saying that makes UFOs real. I'm saying our judgment might be too hasty. We don't know enough about their intent. We don't know enough about their technology. Our government is not being very helpful in enlightening us, on and on and on. It's a great mystery.
Do you remember the 70s show, Project Blue Book?
I don't know if I ever watched
Maybe it's called UFO. I think it was Project Blue Book. It was a Jack Webb production. At the beginning, it's Ezekiel chapter 1. That's how I know this. I mean, you'd hear Jack Webb's voiceover. Ezekiel saw the wheel. This is the wheel. He said, he saw it. And then it goes into Project Blue Book, and they have two good-looking guys, just like, one Adam 12 from an earlier time.
Oh, yeah.
Also a Jack Webb production. And going with the Air Force, going out and, researching these claims, these claim sightings.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and see, I like the scientist, what is his name? I have so many names in my head anymore. Gary Nolan, who says, we're not interested in coming to any hard, fast conclusions. What we're doing is we're investigating something that actually is kind of weird, and it's really, quite frankly, somewhat exciting, mysterious. We may not have any hard answers. That's not what we're looking for. We're investigating something that is expanding our understanding and possibly expanding our understanding of science. And that can never be wrong. We're not taking things off the table. Well, I don't believe in UFOs, therefore I'm not going to study them. Well, hello, Mr. Closed-minded. Don't ask me to believe anything you talk about scientifically then. Gary Nolan, who is a world-renowned man out of Stanford, scientist, microbiology and stuff like that, he says Science, proper science, never takes stuff off the table. It leaves it all on there and explores it all. Now, that is the scientific attitude. So that's how you can get the Bayesian probability. You must look at all sides. So that's what we're doing tonight. If it's religious, we're not claiming we believe the religion. If it's scientific, we're not claiming we're believing the science. We're exploring. So.
Carrie, that reminds me of this statement by J. Allen Hynek that I skipped by. As a scientist, he said, I must be mindful of the lessons of the past. All too often, it has happened that matters of great value to science were overlooked because the new phenomenon did not fit the accepted scientific outlook of the time. So there's J. Allen Hynek on the issue.
There you go.
All right, so Mormons believe in other worlds. We talked about Moroni beaming down to visit Joseph Smith. And here's something else.
Yeah,
Bill?
I'll just throw a comment in, which is you're not the first person to sort of draw that conclusion. This is an idea that's been around to the point where folks who are, and they, this guy's hairdo sort of takes away his credibility. But
is he for real?
This is Ancient Aliens is like a 17-season program. It has run longer than Friends, I think. And Ancient Aliens, I think it's their episode 8, maybe in their season 1. They went into detail about how they were looking at other stories in the world, sort of like the religious pictures that you had earlier. And they made the argument that Moroni, by the description that's given of him, would fit into the description of an alien. And we'll get to it later when we talk about Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ. But the first vision has that pillar of light as well, that they sort of show up in. Yes. And at the very least, we should notice, true or untrue, we should at least notice that there are similarities in sort of how things are portrayed, which goes to your next slide, in terms of having pillars of light.
I got to tell you, I don't know who this guy is, but I would kill for his hair.
Yeah, well,
right? I might do it differently, but
yeah, you'd do something different with it, but you'd kill for it. I love it.
Awesome. And since you mentioned the first vision, segueing nicely into the first teleportation. Okay, everybody, separate and apart from an angel appearing to Joseph Smith and showing him where the plates were hidden from which he translated the Book of Mormon by the gift and power of God, Joseph Smith also claimed that even years before the angel showed up, that he was visited by God the Father and his son, Jesus Christ. Now, it's a little more complicated than that, but we don't have to get into that part, okay? The main thing is that by 1838, Joseph Smith is writing in the same official history in which we quoted from about Moroni appearing to him, the angel. Joseph Smith history, 16b and 17, it talks about two personages, the Father and the Son, appearing to him in a sacred grove, once again in response to his prayer. Yeah. He says, just at this moment, Carrie, you want to read this?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carrie, I got to interrupt. This is called, in Mormon parlance, the first vision. That's what it's called. You say the first vision to any Mormon, they know immediately what you're talking about. That's why I said the first teleportation, to riff on that. Okay, please, Carrie.
Just at this moment of great alarm, I saw a pillar of light exactly over my head, above the brightness of the sun, which descended gradually until it fell upon me. It no longer appeared. Then I found myself delivered from the enemy which held me bound. When the light rested upon me, I saw two personages whose brightness and glory defy all description, standing above me in the air. One of them spake unto me, calling me by name, and said, pointing to the other, this is my beloved son, hear him.
So here we've got the same idea. We've got a pillar of light exactly over his head. Though it's really, I can't imagine it's exactly over his head, because how do you tell it's a pillar then? It just looks like a circle. Maybe it's over here. Anyway, there's a pillar he describes. And the pillar descends gradually until it falls upon him. And then within this pillar of light appear two personages. By the way, a little known fact is that an earlier version of this said at the last line, it says, one of them spake unto me, calling me by name, and said, take me to your leader. A lot of people don't know that. Actually, that is a joke for those of you. I'm kidding. Okay. But yeah, you've got this thing. These are the very foundational truth claims and visions and experiences that Mormonism is based on. Yeah. And there's a nice picture down there in the bottom left that you added, Bill. Thank you for adding that. You see, this is Mormon artwork of this experience, the first vision, you see the pillar of light. You can barely see the two beings in it, right? Mormons know where they're going to be and how many of them there's supposed to be, so they can find them quicker than the normal person. But there's God and Jesus right there appearing to Joseph Smith. And over here, this is Heavenly Father and Jesus right before they visited Joseph Smith.
Yeah, send us down.
Mhm.
Make it so, Scotty.
We will go down, Captain.
Beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life down here.
Kolob.
What
Now,
is
not only do Mormons believe that there's life on other worlds, they believe that God is a being of flesh and bones, as tangible as man's. Okay. Also Jesus, they're two separate beings in Mormonism. And that God lives on a planet that is very near a place, perhaps a star, called Kolob. It actually has a name, Kolob. It's in LDS scripture, not the Book of Mormon, additional scripture Joseph Smith produced later on, called the Book of Abraham, in which he gave inspired translations of Egyptian documents that came into his possession. And this part of the explanation is of this document, which is called a hypocephalus in Egyptian circles, okay? That's what they had. So he says figure 1, he labels them, right? Figure 1, he says, is Kolob, signifying the first creation. Nearest to the celestial or the residence of God. So Kolob is the first creation that's nearest to the residence of God. God has a residence in Mormonism. It's not in the clouds. He's not everywhere present. He has a local habitation and a name, and it's near this place called Kolob. Then it talks a little bit about the measurement of time on Kolob.
I'll just note, RFM,
Yes.
just by the literal definition of extraterrestrial,
Mhm.
this fits that definition. Whatever God is, Joseph Smith is claiming he is a being of flesh and bone who resides on some other planet outside of our planet. That's extraterrestrial.
Yeah, and if you follow it through, according to Mormonism, what God is busy doing is creating worlds and then populating them with his offspring.
May I bring up a quick point? I reviewed
Please.
this on my website last week, The Orion Zone by a gentleman named Gary A. David, where he demonstrates in really seriously fascinating detail that the ancient Hopis and the Anasazi also had star people visiting them. They celebrate them with the Kachina dolls. The Kachina dolls symbolize the star people, and they tell the Hopi that they also reside on a planet, and that is where the Hopi are from, and that star is Sirius. And the chief Kachina is called Masa. He is representing or represented by the constellation Orion, which they set up their villages to emulate on Earth. And it's the same thing with Robert Temple's book, The Sirius Mystery. Apparently, the Dogon tribe in Africa also were told they are originally from Sirius. Isn't that fascinating? There is a residence of Masa as well as us. And it's not this earth that we originated, our ancestors anyway. So I'm just saying I agree with everything Bill just said. And that doesn't mean any of this is true. We're just exploring, but that's a pretty good ET description, guys. True story.
Well, Mormonism has part of its scripture that there is a city floating around out there or someplace. Mormon doesn't do a lot of floating. Things have real places, but it's a city. It's called the city of Enoch, which Mormons believe was lifted up because they were so righteous. The entire city was lifted up into the air and taken up into heaven with God. Maybe it's over there by Kolob. I don't know. No, I mean, really, presumably it needs some kind of an atmosphere for these folks to breathe.
Some early Mormons said that's the origin of the Gulf of Mexico.
Right, exactly. Very good. And Bill was likening that mothership from Close Encounters to being the city of Enoch. That's why he said that. But as part of Mormon doctrine, the Mormons, the Latter-day Saints, must, even though they're trying to get away from it now, I'll tell you, they must return to Jackson County, Missouri, and build a city, a special city, the city of Zion, which will have a temple in it. And once that is completed and the saints are gathered there and they are sufficiently righteous, then as part of the second coming of Jesus, the city of Enoch is going to come down from heaven and join the New Jerusalem, and they will be joined as one. And that's all part of Mormonism. That sounded similar to what you're talking about with the Hopi. Do you think it is?
I think so. And then the other connection here is the Hopis say, and most of the ideas in their prophecies can be interpreted to have already occurred. And so we're really approaching the end of the fourth world, the current world we're in. They say one of the final signs is when the blue Kachina comes back, and he will be a very large blue star in the sky. And people are going to think that's a meteorite coming to hit the earth. And it's actually Massa as the blue Kachina coming back to help save mankind from utter destruction. But he's going to bring a lot of destruction.
Which is exactly what Joseph Smith said about the sign of the Son of Man.
Yes.
That it would be a star who come from the east unto the west, and people will look at it and they will say it is a meteor.
Yes.
Joseph Smith said that back in the 1830s. Might have been the 1840s, but it wasn't long after that because he died in 1844.
Yeah. And then kind of as a conjunction with this, there are Jewish websites on YouTube right now who are saying that they have the red heifers and they are just about prepared to sacrifice the red heifer, which is the last thing they need to do to bring back the Messiah. But they are preparing they have all the priestly vestments, the clothing, it's already been made. They're ready to rebuild the third temple.
It sounds like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, really. It's amazing because every group of people, the Jewish, the Christian, Mormon, the Hopi now, everyone's saying, hey, things are starting to build up and get serious right now. So just interesting.
Right. And whether that's a common impulse being shared by everybody from a different source, or whether it's just a natural result of the world being in such commotion, I don't know.
Could be.
Yeah. Now, the second part of the second figure, by the way, on this explanation about Kolob and where God lives and where his residence is, figure 2 stands next to Kolob. So there's another thing. It's called by the Egyptians Oli Blish. We don't care about that. It's the next grand governing creation near to the place where God resides. So you got Kolob, closest place to where God resides. There's another place called Oli Blish, which is the next grand governing creation next to where God resides. So remember that, okay? Because number one, we've got God with a body of flesh and bones as tangible as man's, and we've got a specific location where he lives. And this is a great slide that Bill put together and found. Can you describe this, Bill? It has a little bit more detail about the different things that were talked about.
It's just I don't know what the words I want to use. It's the astronomy of the heavens based on how Joseph Smith taught it. And when he translated, it was the Book of Abraham, correct? He translates it and he comes up with all these interesting names of planets that are out there by where Heavenly Father lives. And so I just put a little image of, an old guy that's sort of, I guess we could say is Heavenly Father. You've got a picture of Christ there. But really, I was just trying to point out this idea of Kolob and multiple other planets, because when we get to the quotes by LDS leaders here shortly, they make comments, and anybody who's grown up in Mormonism, we all know that there's lots of planets out there that are inhabited by lots of different people, and what their relationship is to us, as far as what Mormonism says, we'll get into that. But Joseph lined out an entire, I don't know what it was, a dozen planet names or so that he gave of things that were out there in the universe.
Yes. Thank you very much for the slide. I think the Jesus, that kind of looks like Spencer Anderson to me. And Heavenly Father bears a distinct resemblance to Rabbi Joe.
There you go.
There you go. That's okay.
Rabbi Joe just got a promotion.
Jesus was Jewish. Why not Heavenly Father also, right?
Absolutely. There's only one way to find out, and we don't need to go into that here.
No.
So here's what I say. As soon as you give the Father and the Son physical bodies of flesh and bone, okay, which Mormonism does, as tangible as man's, and as soon as you give God a residence situated in time and space and in relation to other celestial bodies, the question arises, how does God get back and forth? Remember, he's not everywhere present. He is situated in one place and time just as much as I am, just as much as Bill is, just as much as the backyard professor is, just as much as you are. So how does he get back and forth? Which raises the question, I mean, there's different possibilities, right? He
Yeah.
can fly like Superman, which would be pretty cool. Or he can fly like George Jetson.
Or the other option you've already reviewed as well. Or he teleports like Star Trek. That would be a third option. And again, these stories say pillars of light. So I don't know.
Right. And that raises the question of whether you can teleport from one planet to another, or where you have to be, whether you have to be within a sufficiently close range as provided by a spaceship like George Jetson has. All right. So what does God need with a starship? Well, maybe he needs one to get around. Okay. Maybe he does need a starship. Wouldn't that be interesting?
That is interesting.
The name of it would be the Nauvoo, probably.
The USS Nauvoo.
Yes, thank you. The USS Nauvoo. I'm glad you got it. Okay, here's something fascinating that I was into 25 years ago. MIBs. I hope everybody out there knows what a MIB is. Men in Black. MIBs were around before the movie. The movie is based on this idea, this sort of almost folklorish idea, if I can put it that way, associated with UFO and close encounters. Here's the poster, Protecting the Earth from the Scum of the Universe, Men in Black. That was a big hit.
Yeah.
But once again, this was just entertainment. They sort of had something to do with MIBs, because the idea behind MIBs, Men in Black, is this. In popular culture and UFO conspiracy theories, men in black are government agents dressed in black suits who question, interrogate, harass, threaten, allegedly memory wipe. Okay, that's a big thing in the movie, right?
That's a big
Allegedly
thing.
memory wipe.
How would you know if you had your memory wiped?
Well, you don't.
Hmm.
That's the thing.
Exactly. That's what
I'm sorry. I was thinking in terms of the movie. The audience sees it. But you're talking about how would one know to report it in reality that my memory got wiped?
Yeah, because your memory got wiped.
I don't know how it comes out. I don't know, but it's a very good question. Okay. The skeptical side of me, which is 95% of me, really appreciates that question. But also sometimes assassinate witnesses of UFOs to keep them silent about what they have seen. This is how important it is for the government to shut you up. They have their own squadron of men in black to come out and take care of business. So the term is also frequently used to describe mysterious men working for unknown organizations. This is a more generic kind of description. All right. So the MIB supposedly appeared throughout different moments in history. Several alleged encounters with the men in black have been reported by UFO researchers and enthusiasts. So you know what the interesting thing about this is? Men in Black versus Quakers. Joseph Smith again, who is quoted, it's a late quote, but he's quoted as having said, inhabitants of the moon. He believed in inhabitants on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Inhabitants of the moon are more of a uniform size than the inhabitants of the earth, being about 6 feet in height. They dress very much like the Quaker style and are quite general in style or the one fashion of dress. So they all dress like Quakers and they're all 6 feet high. They live to be very old, coming generally near 1,000 years. Funny thing is, how do Quakers dress? Carrie, yes, you have an answer?
No, I have another point to make.
Please do.
There is one idea out there in ufology that says there is a UFO base on the dark side of the moon. and that there are, I think they've identified 5 different species of aliens now. Some are called reptilians, others are called the Greys.
Elder Bednar is one of the former.
Elder Bednar is one of the reptilians, without question.
Yeah.
But it is the taller beings. The Greys are the shorter ones, but it is the taller beings who are in charge of all of the other aliens, supposedly. The only thing off on this description in Joseph Smith is the Quaker dress style. But other than that, that might actually be a real, hang on to this, I'm just saying, don't stone me, but that might actually be a real description, man.
I don't know. And what's he going to liken it to? Who else does he know who wears black from top to bottom, head to foot,
Exactly.
cap of PA? Yeah. So I don't know. And is this an example of remote viewing?
That's what we'll see. Joseph Smith claimed to have a seer stone, didn't he?
He did.
And he claimed to be able to see the future and the past and all that.
Do remote viewers use anything?
I'm just saying, man.
Carrie,
Yes.
do remote viewers use anything physical in order to focus their concentration?
Tim Rathbone's in the audience. He knows more about remote viewing than I do. And I'm going to confess, I am still fighting my bias or working on my bias, because I was raised with the idea that remote viewing is woo-woo. And now I'm coming to realize that I might be wrong. And I know people are going to say, yeah, dude, you swallowed the Kool-Aid. You go ahead and mock all you flipping want to, but this thing appears to be actually happening and real, and it works. So I don't know. Tim says, no, remote viewers do not use anything. Okay. They use meditation, but yeah. And so this, all of these ideas are just so, our problem is, as skeptic humans, is we label things and then we imagine we understand it, and nothing could be further from the truth. Oh, well, he's just an idiot. So you think you know all about him. And actually, Einstein was not an idiot. Yes. He was a freaking genius, but nobody knew it in his childhood, right? So see, the labeling idea is where it might be our downfall. So
yeah, once we put a label on something, we think we understand it, like electricity, like gravity.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things that we really don't understand that well.
Excellent point. And plasma now. And telekinesis and consciousness, all of which the UFOs are using. And okay. I say UFOs meaning the beings.
Carrie?
Yes,
all right,
sir.
Everybody out there, I got an announcement. Everybody out there who believes in telekinesis, raise my hand.
And mine too. However, I am studying it.
Yes.
You levitated your own hand there, RFM.
It was unbidden. It was like I was being moved upon by an outside force.
Can I just say how, like, remote viewing isn't that far away from translating by the gift and power of God. It's not that far away from a catalyst theory. It
isn't. I agree, Bill.
Sort of the same kind of concept. So
in a way, yes, sir.
And a seer stone isn't that far away from an iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, I have to let everybody know who's not a member of the church or ever has been. Joseph Smith actually, even though the LDS Church covered this up for about like over 100 years, the internet caught up with him, and they finally had to reveal and agree with the fact on their official church website that Joseph Smith used a stone as part of many of his revelations that he received and translations that he did. In fact, it appears that he used a seer stone to focus his attention in order to dictate the entirety of the Book of Mormon, and everyone's looked at the plates.
Yeah.
That's what the historical sources seem to say. That's why we're talking about a stone and using it to focus like Joseph Smith had. Now I hand it off to Bill. He's got some great slides talking about what prophets, presidents of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and fortunately I've already talked to you about them and what Mormons believe them to be, the guy who speaks for God because God talks to him, what they've said about extraterrestrial beings.
Yeah, and there's several articles that are out there in Mormon Church, LDS Church, and again, there's all these things we have to sort of stop and say, but the formal name of the group that followed Brigham Young after Joseph Smith, the founder's death, the Brighamite faction, at least in the beginning, was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which still exists today. Been lots of breakoffs. But they're the largest faction of Mormonism, and their leadership over 100 years, more than that, have been speaking in ways that would connect to this conversation, talking about aliens or extraterrestrial life. And so this LDS Living article goes into detail about what prophets have said. We already did this one, but according to Latter-day Saint Oliver B. Huntington, Joseph Smith said there was life on the moon. Huntington also reported that he was promised in a patriarchal blessing, which is a special blessing that Mormons get when they sort of come of age. It was given to him by Joseph Smith Sr. that he would preach to the gospel to the inhabitants of the moon. In a statement given on July 24th, 1870, LDS Church President Brigham Young discussed the possibility that the sun and the moon were inhabited, but said that these were his own personal thoughts. In response to the claim of his being ignorant on the matter, Young agreed, asking, "Are not we all ignorant about these matters?" Which is sort of, to Carey's credit, we couldn't possibly understand everything about how the universe works. We already know that in quantum mechanics, some things work different than our logic says they should work. And yes, we should depend on the most rational conclusion. But in order to at least gather information, we have to know what all the possible conclusions are and to investigate it and then to make up our mind based on the strength of evidence. So Young is sort of saying, like, yeah, I'm ignorant, but aren't we all?
Hey, Bill?
Yes.
Can I just remark that preaching the gospel to the inhabitants of the moon is not the hard part. The hard part is baptizing them.
Yeah, you got to bring some water with you, folks.
You got to bring them back to earth.
It's either going to boil or freeze.
Yeah. The origin of God the Father, according to Mormon theology, God the Father, we already talked about this, flesh and bones. So there's that. I think we've already done this one. Other worlds and extraterrestrial life. There's been lots of speculation in Mormonism that most Mormons who at least have been around a while, Mormonism has changed in the last 10 years, but at least for those who have been around a while, we all sort of grew up in Mormonism knowing that there were lots of planets that were inhabited. And so on the Wikipedia page for Mormon cosmology, there's a conversation there about how there are other worlds. And it says, it is not clear if the other inhabited worlds mentioned in Mormon scripture and teachings refer to planets within this universe or not. Mormon leaders and theologians have taught that these inhabitants are similar or identical to humans. We'll get to that in a moment. And that they too are subject to the atonement of Jesus Christ. The doctrine of other worlds is found in Mormon scripture, in the endowment ceremony, in the teachings of Joseph Smith, its founding prophet. In addition, many LDS leaders and theologians have elaborated on these principles through exegesis or speculation, and many of these ideas are widely accepted among Mormons. It was widely accepted with me. I believe it was widely accepted with both you, Carey, and RFM. Some modern LDS church leaders have taught that people live on other earths. For instance, Apostle Joseph Fielding Smith, later president of the church, wrote, "We are not the only people that the Lord has created. We are brothers and sisters. We have brothers and sisters on other earths. They look like us because they too are children of God and were created in his image, for they are also his offspring." Apostle Neil A. Maxwell wrote, "We do not know how many inhabited worlds there are or where they are, but certainly we are not alone." And I'll just say, Mormonism, more than I think other denominations, sects of Christianity, makes room for aliens. It has a theology that allows for that. Now, when I grew up in Mormonism, there was also theology that said that nothing from outside of this world could interact with our world, that they had to stay in their sphere of influence. We have to stay in ours. Yeah. But at the very least, we acknowledge that there were extraterrestrial life in other places.
Yeah, the problem is that they don't look like, little grays in Mormon theology. Right. They're all kind of look like us. Actually, they all look like Sonny Bono.
And I'll just note, RFM, to that fact, when Joseph Smith says that there's people on the moon, they look like Quakers, that fits that whole idea perfectly, which is they look almost like us.
Isn't that odd that Joseph Fielding Smith also said there is no way the Lord is going to let us land on the moon? We will not go to the moon. Our home is this earth. And yet Joseph Smith said there's Quakers on the moon, or people that dress like the Quakers.
And to go back to what Bill was saying, Joseph Fielding Smith, when he made that prediction, that men would never land on the moon. I mean, it's the 60s, right? JFK announces it. It's going to be done by the end of the decade. It's huge. I lived through it. It's incredible, okay? But Joseph Fielding Smith is coming from the position that he believes that inhabitants of one world will never be able to go to another world, right?
Right.
That's why he was so convinced. It's not stated in scripture, okay? I've showed you the scripture for the stuff that Mormons actually believe that's in scripture. There's this whole other thing called tradition and speculation. This whole idea that Mormons can, I mean, people from this earth can never go to another earth, another planet can never come here. Total speculation, okay? But he believed it enough to put himself on the line and say that people would never, ever make it to the moon. And of course, by the time 1969 rolled around, he was mistaken. And I think he admitted, I think, well, I was wrong.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we did Maxwell. Somebody said he'd look good in a Quaker hat. He does have sort of that Quaker look, Elder Maxwell. June 9th, 1884, Abraham H. Cannon writes of a conversation with Eliza R. Snow. Quote, and in the course of our conversation, she said she heard the prophet Joseph once remark that when the 10 tribes were taken away, the earth was divided so that they occupy a separate planet from this. This was news to me. Now, I hadn't heard this one before, by the way.
The understatement of the century.
Yeah.
This was news to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And then this one, I heard Joseph the prophet say that he had seen John the Revelator and had a long conversation with him, whom told him that he, John, was their leader, prophet, priest, and king, and said that he was preparing that people to return, and further said there is a mighty host of us. And Joseph further said that men might hunt for them, but they could not find them, for they were upon a portion of this planet that had been broken off and which was taken away. So the city of Enoch, sort of like that. And then the sea rushed in between Europe and America. So forget Pangea, Europe and America. And that's when the peace returns. There would be a great shake. The sea would then move to the north where it belonged in the morning of creation. Daniel Allen, Minutes of Parowan, Utah School of the Prophets, 17 August, 1872.
So this isn't out of the Gulf of Mexico in this quote, or should I say the Gulf of America. This is actually from a land that is said to have existed between the Americas and Europe. And that got broken off. And apparently that created.
Maybe that's where Atlantis went.
The Atlantic Ocean. I know that's where Atlantis was supposed to be by some people's thoughts, but yeah, it got taken away and it's up there and it's doing whatever it's doing. Maybe you could point to it. I don't know if it looked like Venus or something, some light in the sky, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where they are. And I think there are statements like that. But yeah, this is all over early Mormonism.
And then some folks may not know this, but Battlestar Galactica was done by, what's the guy's, Glenn Larson.
Yeah.
And it was based on Mormon theology. He was, I think, a Mormon himself. It says, when Enoch and his city was taken away, again, this is Joseph Smith, but this is secondhand in Wandel Mace's journal. When Enoch and his city was taken away, a portion of the earth was taken and would again be restored. Also in the days of Peleg, the earth was divided. See Genesis, 10th chapter, 25th verse. He then referred to the 10 tribes, saying, you know, a long time ago in the days of Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, when the 10 tribes was taken away and never heard of since. He said the earth will be restored as at the beginning, and the last taken away will be the first to return, for the last shall be first, and the first shall be last in all things. He illustrated the return by saying, some of you, brethren, have been coming up the river on a steamboat, and while seated at the table, the steamboat run against a snag, which upset the table and scattered the dishes. So it will be when these portions of the earth return. It will make the earth reel to and fro like a drunken man, quoting the 24th chapter of Isaiah, 20th verse, when speaking of the return of the 10 tribes, he said, quote, the mountains of ice shall flow down at their presence, and the highway shall be cast up in the middle of the great deep. So there's that.
Last line is in the Doctrine and Covenants.
Yeah.
And then I just note there, some of these quotes inspired a filmmaker by the name of Glenn Larson, who would make a TV series about the lost 10 tribes of Israel being in outer space and trying to return to Earth, called Battlestar Galactica, which would be updated to a less religious version later on when they redid the series.
Didn't they have Kolob in there as well?
That sounds familiar. And then there was some space movie just recently that still kept Mormonism going far into the future and had missionaries trying to proselyte and share the gospel in space.
Yeah, I watched
hundreds of
that
years
series a couple of years ago. I can't remember the name of it. My wife.
That's the one with the USS Nauvoo, right?
Yeah, the USS Nauvoo.
Nauvoo was the name of the city that the Mormons found and created.
Expanse, that was it. Yes.
Oh, Expanse is the name of it?
Thank you, Ray Lawler. Yep.
It's Hebrew. Apparently means beautiful.
Yes.
That's what Joseph Smith said. In
Yeah, Nauvoo. Spencer W. Kimball, in the well-known book in Mormon circles, Faith Precedes the Miracle,
Yes.
he said, is there association of non-human beings? There is no question. Are planets out in space inhabited by intelligent creatures? Without doubt. LDS Church President Spencer W. Kimball. And then
Even looks like he could be one of them.
He was soda.
And Kent Nielsen, who is passed away now, but he used to be a BYU faculty member in the physics and astronomy department. So this is a scientist with science education, science background. Just to note, this race of gods, as BYU professor Kent Nielsen describes in his 1971 article, People on Other Worlds, and I'll just note it's still available on lds.org, People on Other Worlds, April 1971, so you can read the whole thing if you'd like to. Looks very much, he says, People on Other Worlds looks very much like we do. Now, how does he know? He's just going off of what past leaders have said. In fact, we are part of the same species and have the ability to inherit celestial glory like our Heavenly Father. Obviously, God's sons and daughters would be of his species, would resemble him. Nielsen writes in his article, consequently, people on other worlds would be like us because we are all his children. According to BYU's Encyclopedia of Mormonism, it is possible that these extraterrestrial inhabitants could differ from our appearance in unspecified ways. But nowhere in Scripture does it mention how this might be. How might they be different than the way we humans look? In our temporal existence, we may not be able to travel to worlds beyond our solar system, but other beings in other phases of existence are not so limited, Nielsen explained. So here you have someone diverging from that sort of theology and says that maybe there are other beings out there who could come this direction and visit us.
He's suggesting that they've been exalted.
Right. The gospel has been taught in every dispensation by space travel. Interesting.
Wow. Merch it. The gospel has been taught in every dispensation by space travel.
And he's not, and by the literal sense of the word, he's right.
Yeah.
Heavenly beings have traveled from an area near a star named Kolob to come into our galaxy and our solar system to land on planet Earth and to talk to beings here. He says, true, the visitors do not use rocket ships.
He doesn't know that.
They have more efficient means.
But he doesn't know what they are.
No.
In other words, I don't know how they do it. It's just not rocket ships.
Carrie.
I have a suggestion. Chris Bledsoe says they travel in those light orbs. And those are not, it's weird. He says they're shapeshifters somewhat. And light, it's no problem. So I'm just saying, I'm just throwing that out there. There's always something out there that either a conspiracy theory or a potential experience or witness or whoever, but Bledsoe swears that the beings are in those light orbs and they can zippity-doo-dah faster than the tic-tacs, obviously, but they travel that way. So who knows?
Even when they had a similar thing going on with the War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, they had to come down from the mothership, going back underneath the ground to get into the machines. You remember the whole show.
Yep.
So many different variations of ways that have been hypothesized. Sorry, but he's going to get to Moroni.
Yeah, he says when Moroni returned to heaven, when Moroni returned to heaven after one of his visits to Joseph Smith, Joseph saw, as it were, a conduit open right up into heaven. Now, heaven is so far from here. It's such a strange thing, the language, because sometimes it seems like we're talking about God in the clouds, and sometimes we're talking about God on the other side of the entire universe. A conduit opened right into the heavens, and he ascended till he entirely disappeared. He ascended through the beam of light until he
through the ceiling. And it's
Yeah.
almost like Joseph Smith is describing seeing the beam of light. And if he says it goes to the heavens, it implies strongly that he's able to see the circular tunnel through the ceiling, at least partially beyond the ceiling, to be able to say that.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Former professor in history of science at Brigham Young University. There's that article again.
One other thing I want to say, when he mentions in the very first line, the race of gods, quote unquote, in that last one at the top.
Yep, sorry. Yep.
It's okay. The race of gods. I think he's riffing on Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods, which was all in, and he wrote some sequels to it because it was hugely popular at the time. So I think that's what he's riffing off of, and basically trying to say,
would have been the 1970s, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, here's 1971, right?
Good eye. Yeah.
So he's basically saying we know who the real race of gods are.
Right.
You know, Von Daniken, you're all wet, but we know who the real race of gods are because we are the Mormons.
And then just sort of wrapping up, I just want to note there are other books out there that are connecting, you know, from within Mormonism, exploring ideas within Mormonism, alongside connected to UFOs, UAPs, aliens, extraterrestrials. So one of them here is A Mormon Looks at Aliens and UFOs, written by Warren P. Aston. He is also helps out with The Interpreter, and he is an apologist with Fair Mormon. For those who are not Mormon, there's a lot of folks who defend the church. They take the arguments that the critics make that show the evidence and indicate that things don't hold up, and then apologists come in for Fair Mormon, which is an organization, or the Interpreter Foundation, and they come in and come up with answers that if you squint one eye and you create some mental gymnastics, you can make it work. And of course, I say that while we're sitting here talking about UFOs, correct? So Warren,
we're three examples of the former group.
What's that?
We're three examples right here.
Yeah, we all three of us used to be apologists of one sort or another, and eventually couldn't make those kinds of solutions work, and to one degree or another have stepped away from those perspectives. But I'll just note, Warren P. Aston, you brought this up, RFM. He did some work on Nahum.
Couldn't resist.
Nahum
and Lehi's journey.
He was one of the originals.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he's that, and then on
it's the next. Right, oh, sorry, it's the next slide, I think.
Oh no, I think I took it off because it wasn't pertinent to this topip, but I did want to mention it. Sorry. Okay. And then I'll just note the book on the right is much newer. This is written by Paul Reeve, who has been the person who essentially created the backbone data for the race and priesthood gospel topic essay. I don't know how I would explain that to a non-Mormon, but the church has in recent years gone out of its way to acknowledge some facts while still carefully wording its perspective. And it created a bunch of essays on the problematic issues. One of those was on the race ban that Mormonism.
Don't even try. Don't even try.
I know. Okay, I'll move on.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how immediately complicated it becomes to talk about Mormonism to somebody who doesn't know anything about it?
That's intentional, by the way. All high demand, I should say all, but most high demand fundamentalist religions create their own intricate, complex language, rhetoric, vernacular, so that insiders know insiders and outsiders can't figure it out unless they become an insider. Paul Reeve and Michael Scott Van Wagenen wrote Between Pulpit and Pew, The Supernatural World in Mormon History and Folklore. So they attempted to tackle that as well. I do have a little bit about Warren P. Aston up there and a little bit about Mormon apologist. I'll just say what he says here. This is something said by Warren Aston. The evidence that something is happening which defies conventional science is abundant, unambiguous, and is readily available in every category imaginable. UFOs are a long-term, worldwide, multicultural reality with much more physical evidence available than most of us realize. The mounting evidence that UFOs and aliens are real and are part of the future for all of us deserves our most serious attention and best efforts to understand it. So that's him. Can I
ask Carrie an important question? I'll do it anyway. I'll take that. Silence is consent. Okay, so here's the thing. Warren Aston is a big-time UFO, not just writer, but believer, okay? He's a huge believer in the UFO phenomenon. He's written about it. He is also a huge believer in Mormonism, and he has written books defending the church and proclaiming to find physical evidence that supports the Book of Mormon as an actual ancient historical text. Now, it is very common. This is a bit long question. I apologize, Carrie.
It's all good.
I'm just giving you a heads up. It's coming your way here in a second.
Mhm.
It is very frequent when Warren Aston's name or research is brought up about the Book of Mormon for critics to counter by slinging mud at him, basically, and saying, yeah, this is the same guy who believes in UFOs,
UFOs.
right? Carrie, are you concerned that your scholarship in Mormonism, which is extensive, and theism and atheism, all sorts of things that you are a huge scholar in, and the scriptures, and you've podcasted about, are you concerned that if someone were to point to you as an expert in Mormonism, that someone else might say, yeah, that's the guy who believes in UFOs?
Nah. I don't give a damn what people think, RFM. I want to find out the reality and truth.
And somebody else is asking a similar question. I'd really like to hear if Backyard Professor has had a criticism from his peers in Mormon studies with his new focus on UAP and aliens.
I have not, and that is most remarkable and interesting. Thanks, Lahopi. He's one of my audience guys. He's awesome. But actually, no, and that is quite remarkable. But I have had criticism from other somewhat religions, and then those, of course, who just, no matter what you tell them, no matter what you show them, no matter which book you show them. I mean, Lou Elizondo's eminent, and I have dozens of books I've read already. It doesn't matter what you show them, they're not going to believe, and so they think you're a nut job and a kook. But who cares? They thought I was a nut job and a kook when I was an apologist. They thought I was a nut job and a kook when I went on my mission. They thought
you were a nut job and a kook when you were involuntarily committed.
Yes, they thought I was a nut job and a kook when I escaped from the mental hospital. So who cares what people think? I'm looking for the truth. I'm looking for the evidence.
What other religions? What other religions? You say Mormonism. No Mormons have given you any pushback, but other religions have. Tell us, please.
Christians. Absolutely.
Non-Mormon Christians.
Because to some fundamentalist Christians, these aliens are demons, period. End of discussion.
They have only a limited number of options. They've got the Bible as their handbook. There's God, there's angels, there's Satan, and there's demons.
Yes.
So it's
and
not
they
God,
always
it's not angels.
try to demonize the UFOs, except for Chris Bledsoe. Yeah, Latter Daily Digest. Thank you. That's nice of you. I love you, bro. You're awesome.
Go ahead, Carrie. Do you have something else you want to say?
No, please.
Okay. All I want to finish up with 2 more slides, and then I'm going to pass it back to RFM. I just want to note in the present moment, the Salt Lake Tribune's Mormon Land podcast on September 7th, 2023, did a podcast episode, E.T. Meets Joseph Smith, Why Some Latter-day Saints Believe Aliens Really Are Angels in Disguise. So sort of the same proposition that we've sort of talked about earlier in this show. And then Matthew Bowman, who is a well-respected researcher, historian on both sides of the aisle, whether you're a believer in Mormonism or a critic and disbeliever of Mormonism, I think far and wide, both sides respect Matthew Bowman.
He's a researcher of Mormonism, right? He's
a
Mormon.
researcher, historian of Mormonism.
Yeah.
He wrote an article in the Salt Lake Tribune, why some Latter-day Saints believe in UFOs and why these alien travelers fit with their religion. He's sharing, again, a lot of the same stuff that we went into earlier. So with that, I'll pass it back to RFM, and we can talk about the hairy guy on the screen.
Why are there so many songs?
I'm not talking about Daniel Peterson.
No.
You're saying that resembles Daniel Peterson?
Same posture.
I said we're not talking about Daniel Peterson, the hairy guy on the screen.
No, we're not. He's making a midnight run to Krispy Kreme.
And I want to just let me lead you into this by asking this. I told you earlier, RFM, I don't know what this has to do with aliens.
Yeah, I don't either.
Are you kidding?
You
don't know about the Bigfoot UFO connection?
No.
Tell us about Bigfoot.
Gary, I'm here to instruct and to edify.
Yeah, please.
It's huge, baby. It's huge.
Okay.
Bigfoot has long been associated with
there
UFOs.
it is. There's the evidence, Bill. That artist conception right there.
Yeah.
Right. Believe, right? Over here, alien, paranormal, Bigfoot, UFOs, and the Men in Black, bringing it all together. Thanks, Tam. I agree. It's fun stuff.
It is.
And Mormonism doesn't miss out with Bigfoot either, okay? Because in 1835, an apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ, or I should say an apostle in the LDS Church, Mormons believe them to be apostles of the Lord Jesus Christ, had his own Bigfoot encounter in Missouri, and this is how he described it. As I was riding along the road on my mule, I suddenly noticed a very strange person walking beside me. His head was about even with my shoulders as I sat in my saddle. He wore no clothing, but was covered with hair. His skin was very dark. I asked him where he dwelt, and he replied that he had no home, that he was a wanderer in the earth and traveled to and fro. He said he was a very miserable creature, and his mission was to destroy the souls of men. Cue evil laughter. That's what an apostle is reported to have said about an experience he had in 1835 with a person who sounds a lot like Bigfoot. But on the other hand, in Mormonism, these passages, okay, where it talks about wander in the earth and travel to and fro, I think it's probably in the ellipses, where this Bigfoot, I'm just going to call him a Bigfoot, okay? Where this Bigfoot-like creature identifies himself as Cain. Yes, that Cain, the son of Adam and Eve, who slew his brother Abel and was cursed by the Lord to wander to and fro in the earth forever, even up till 1835, and perhaps even today.
Okay, but what's that got to do with UFOs?
That's why, okay, this is why I made the connection.
Okay.
Bigfoot and UFOs are already connected. This is the Mormon Bigfoot UFO trifecta. Okay. And if you don't believe that, I have photographic evidence for you.
Really?
Master Mahan is a name that Mormons have for Cain, right? Master Mahan in the religious text of the LDS movement is a title assumed first by Cain, later by his descendant Lamech, but mainly it's Cain. We understand it to be Cain, right? Master Mahan. Here's the photograph. Check it out. Master Mahan, i.e. Cain, is often present at temple dedications to cause trouble for the sons and daughters of Ephraim. Can you see that? Can you see that, backyard professor?
Yeah, I'm looking.
Oh, this is terrible. Now I'm the Bigfoot. Okay, right there. You see the circle, the red circle? It's blown up here in the bottom right?
Yeah.
There he is right there.
All right, maybe.
At the temple dedication, baby. That's hard evidence.
He's just trying to get his temple work finished. Nobody does.
Yeah, it's an uphill climb for Cain.
Yeah, problem is he's got to take a shower first. He'll probably stink the whole place up.
Yeah, no kidding. That means he's also been around later than 1835.
Yeah.
It can't be any worse than the halitosis of the 70-year-olds in the endowment session. Can't be.
You sound like you're speaking from personal experience.
I've been there a time or two.
I hear it.
There's Master Mahan. Oh, home teachers introduce RFM to the Mormon UFO connection. By the way, this isn't actually a picture of me. And I didn't have a neck brace nor crutches at the time. But I joined the church. I'm assigned home teachers like everybody else. They actually did their home teaching. They came over every month. They would talk with me. There was an older fellow. By older, I mean in his 40s probably. Probably 20 years younger than I am now. The older fellow was. And the other guy was much younger. He was probably Aaronic priesthood age. Anyway, they came over, and one time, I swear my first home teacher felt it was his duty, his mission to introduce me to all the weird and wacky aspects of Mormonism, including, God having sex with Mary and all those kinds of things. But one night, he's talking to me about this subject and about UFOs, and he tells me an experience he had. He was in Seattle, which has a lot of steep hills. I think he mentioned that. He was at one of these stoplights on one of these hills. He looks up. It's the middle of the day, and he sees a disc hovering there in the sky, big as Dallas. And he sat there and he looked at it, and the disc sat there and looked at him. And then he continued on his way and told it to me 20 years or so later.
There you go.
Do you want to take over from here, Bill?
Yeah, I can share the next little bit. So why are we covering all of this? What is the Mormon connection with aliens and UFOs? A lot of what we've shared is speculation or trying to make connections where Mormonism sort of stopped shy of exactly making the connection. And so we wanted to see, if you're asking why this is a big deal, I'll just say this. There was an interesting video. I'm going to go to the next thing. You can tell me more about this gentleman. Tell me a little bit, Backyard Professor, about Ross Coulthart, and let us know sort of who he is.
He's a pretty famous, ardent journalist for News Nation. He's an Australian, and he, for whatever reason, got involved in the UFO topic, and he is well known. He can get pretty much any guest he wants on the show. He does some serious investigation into the whistleblowers before Congress, some of the information on the UFO evidences as far as videos of UFOs, are they real, etc. He does talk to a lot of the military, former military people. He has just recently gotten with yet again another ex-military person, who Jake Barber, and who has gathered a team of expert military men, and they've gotten some equipment. Jake used to work picking up UAP that had been shot down and transporting it back to wherever he was transporting it. Super duper high secret government job. And so
you're saying this guy, Ross Coulthart, says that's what he did?
No, Jake Barber did.
Okay.
Ross Coulthart is the journalist who is interviewing all of these high knowledge people about the reality of UAPs. So he is a very important voice. It has come about, say in the last 6 months or so, that he is beginning to, I don't know how to put this, you guys. It's not him causing it, but there's becoming to be a rift in the UFO community, so to speak. There's quite a few people now who are criticizing him relentlessly, no matter what he does, and I don't agree with that. I myself have criticized some of his material, but other of it is really very valuable and good. So he is an important voice in the UFO world.
And I'll just note, like somebody else mentioned that he's in the UFO world. He's sort of the Joe Rogan. Like you said, he can get anybody on and have a conversation.
Yeah.
He's an award-winning journalist, by the way. He's not a nobody. He's not just a crackpot. It's easy to dismiss people.
He's been at it for 35 years.
He's got lots of credible accolades. He's an Australian investigative journalist, author who's worked in public relations. He's an advocate for the idea that governments are covering up knowledge of UFOs and alien visitors. Now, let me get to where I have it on here. This was the whole reason for the episode tonight. And it is why we then started with this and then gathered enough information about the connections in Mormon history and other places to be able to talk about what's going on here. And so that both the UFO enthusiast would understand the Mormon background, and the Mormon enthusiast, with having Backyard Professor on and some of the other conversation that we've had, will sort of know a little bit about the UFO enthusiast sort of background. And now maybe we can start to make sense of this video. And so here it is. This is Ross Coulthart.
One thing that does interest me is I do think the Church of Scientology knows a lot more than it's letting on. And it's interesting because Danny Sheehan has indicated something about this. I strongly recommend people go back and have a look at his interviews. I also think that it's interesting that the Mormon Church has an inordinate number of people working inside the legacy program. And yes, we know who you are. I have names, I have locations, I have people who are managerial roles in the Mormon Church who just also happen to be in very senior positions in the legacy program. And it's interesting, maybe people in the Mormon faith find it in many ways because so much of the Mormon faith is derived allegedly from an alien communication. If you read the history of the church, maybe they believe that it validates their religion for this to be revealed or explored. I don't know. But no, I'm not aware of any kind of sect or religion that is sharing this knowledge. I do think that there are some religious institutions, though, such as the Mormons and the Scientologists, that have done a lot of work into this area. And frankly, I don't think there's anything sinister in that. If I had the resources, I'd be pouring money into investigating this as well.
So, I want to make some sense of this. I think most UFO enthusiasts would know what the Legacy Group is. Backyard Professor, have you heard of the Legacy Group?
Yeah, that's the back engineering of the UFOs.
Yeah, so this is the government program, government entity that seeks alien aircraft retrieval, alien biological material retrieval, and is trying to reverse engineer. And this sort of came about, at least the first person I know of is Bob Lazar, who claims he worked inside like Area 51. And he, with some degree of accuracy based on things that came out later, reported on things that were going on in Area 51 and claimed that they had alien spacecraft, that the US government was trying to reverse engineer the aircraft so that it could build things with that technology. The program that is doing all of this is claimed to be called the Legacy Program. And what Ross Coulthart here is saying is that there is a unusually high number of Scientologists and people within the Mormon Church. And the way he says it indicates that it's not just lay members who happen to be working for the US government, that Scientology and the LDS Church have people at some. Yes.
He spoke of managerial roles.
Yes, but to a person who's speaking about leadership, if he's saying 70s, and to him, that would be an appropriate word to use.
Yes. Well, they're managers. That's all they are.
I don't think he means like, the manager of, whatever low end sort of subsidiary of LDS Corp. He is talking about higher ups in the church of Scientology and higher up in the church of Mormonism, the Mormon church leaders. And so that caught my eye. I can't remember who sent that to me, but I saw this maybe a week ago or so. I sent it to you, RFM, and I said, we got to figure out a way that we work this into an episode, because I think at the very least it deserves a conversation, whether it's a nothing or whether it's a something. And so I do want to just show another couple of slides so folks can clearly understand the Legacy Group. And then I want to ask what you guys think about this quote. And I want to play it one more time. So let me grab this here. This was just a thumbnail for a video exclusive. More UFO hearings are coming as whistleblowers are called forward.
Right.
Something the Legacy Program, something verified by. But it's basically a YouTube video that says the Legacy Program is real. We have the evidence. We talked earlier about, I think his first name's David, right? David Grusch?
David Grusch, yeah.
Yeah. This is the retired military personnel. He's got a somewhat decorated career, a lot of credibility.
Yeah.
He comes forward and he double checks with the US government on everything that he can say, because they do have the right to put him in trouble if he goes too far. So he's put everything in front of them to say, this is what I'm going to talk about. And they've given him approval, and he's come out, and there's things he can say and there's things he can't say. But when you listen to him, it is clear what he's saying is that he was close enough to these programs that he is absolutely sure there is extraterrestrials who use some sort of aircraft, and he is sort of the center point of all of this buzz that has been going on for the last couple of years. RFM, is there anything you want to say about David Grusch? Because he's the one who revealed that there is a program, that the Legacy Program, that retrieves UFOs. He's the one who's come forward and said, this is how it works.
And has been doing so for decades.
I'm just going to make the obvious observation that many, if not most, definitely most of the foundational, miraculous, supernatural claims of Mormonism also have multiple witnesses.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
And a lot of them stuck by their story until they died.
Yes.
Yeah. Good point. Yep.
Anything else you want to say back here, Professor, about Mr. Grusch?
He is still working on sharing more information, or trying to at least get more whistleblowers to come forward and share more information. He is not and I hope this isn't controversial, he is not a direct witness, but he does claim to have interviewed, say, 30, 40 witnesses who have shared the information with which he then went before Congress and testified. He knows of people who say what he passed on. So
Yeah.
he is a conveyor of information, not an experiencer of this information. But yeah.
He's been able to say a certain set of things in the public venue. Then he's gone into private meetings.
Skiffs.
With certain security intelligence committees in government, et cetera, and he's been able to say a lot more. And when he's gotten done in those conversations, numerous politicians have heard him and have come forward and said, we're going to need to get to the bottom of this. We need to start passing legislation that puts money in places that allows us to investigate this, that sort of compels certain government agencies to have to relinquish the information that they have. And
not only the government agencies, but the private corporations who are threatening the whistleblowers. Here's the downside of going to a skiff. Everything you say in the skiff, you can no longer talk about. So now we'll never hear everything that David Grusch knows if he's been in that skiff, because they will not let him describe anything he said in the skiff, because what that will do is it will dampen the ability of Congress to get their subpoena power to force people to come forward and tell the truth of what they know.
Would not Mr. Grusch know that and therefore resist being part of it? Some people
do, but on the other hand, since he is not a direct experiencer, I think now you say I'm not sure if he's been in a skiff or not.
Right, but you were suggesting that maybe he had, right?
Yeah. I don't know that though. They're very secret about who meets with them in skiffs as well.
My other question is, if he's just a third-hand reporter, why should anything he say in a skiff forbid the actual witnesses from coming forward?
I don't know. That is the politics that has been damning this whole situation for 70 years.
He's not entirely a secondhand witness, right? Like the programs that he worked in, the people that he worked with, the projects that he was on, also some of that had direct relationship to these things. Is that not true, our backyard professor?
I've understood he's just a conveyor of them. Now he was in
my understanding.
Okay, well, I'll have
but you know this better than I do.
Well, I don't know if I know better than you do. I've been reading a lot of books and stuff, but not about David Grusch. So, I mean, there is so much to learn in this subject. You know, there's some people who think all you do is talk out your butt, and it takes you 20 years to figure everything out. But I'm still learning. I'm always learning. So
and I'll just note there is a Wikipedia page on the Legacy program. Folks can go and read that there. David Grusch is a former United States Air Force officer and intelligence official who claimed that the U.S. federal government, in collaboration with private aerospace companies, has highly secretive special access programs involved in the recovery and reverse engineering of non-human spacecraft and their dead pilots, and that people have been threatened and killed in order to conceal these programs. Grusch further claims that he has viewed documents reporting spacecraft of alien origin that have been recovered by Benito Mussolini's government in 1933 and procured by the U.S. in 1944 or 1945 with the assistance of the Vatican and the Five Eyes Alliance. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, and the U.S. Department of Defense, the DoD, have both denied Grusch's claims, stating there are no such programs and that extraterrestrial life has yet to be discovered. No evidence supporting Grusch's UFO claims have been presented, and they have been dismissed by multiple independent experts. I'll also note there are multiple people who have sided up with him as well, who have also had some degree of involvement in some of this stuff and have sort of stood by his side in this too. So I did want to, okay, RFM.
The question I have is, if he's a former U.S. Air Force officer, why does his name plaque say Mr.?
Yeah, okay. I don't know. But
There's a story there.
Yeah, he does have the credentials, he says. I mean, there wouldn't be a way to sort of dismiss that.
That part I'm not talking about.
Yeah.
I'm talking about how it was that he came to leave the Air Force and why
Yeah.
he's called Mr. here and who arranged for that name plaque to say that.
Right. Okay, and I don't know that. So I do want to go back. I want to play this video one more time, and then I just want to get what you guys would want to say about this, and then we'll move on to another cool facet that I think was interesting in the last 48 hours.
One thing that does interest me is I do think the Church of Scientology knows a lot more than it's letting on. And it's interesting because Danny Sheehan has indicated something about this. I strongly recommend people go back and have a look at his interviews. I also think that it's interesting that the Mormon Church has an inordinate number of people working inside the legacy program. And yes, we know who you are. I have names, I have locations, I have people who are managerial roles in the Mormon Church who just also happen to be in very senior positions in the legacy program. And it's interesting, maybe people in the Mormon faith find it in many ways because so much of the Mormon faith is derived allegedly from an alien communication. If you read the history of the church, maybe they believe that it validates their religion for this to be revealed or explored. I don't know. But no, I'm not aware of any kind of sect or religion that is sharing this knowledge. I do think that there are some religious institutions, though, such as the Mormons and the Scientologists, that have done a lot of work into this area. And frankly, I don't think there's anything sinister in that. If I had the resources, I'd be pouring money into investigating this as well.
And both Scientology and the Mormon Church have a lot of money. If nothing else, they have a ton of money. That might be the one thing that deeply connects sort of those two religions. Your guys' thoughts, an inordinate amount of Mormon Church folks, with many being managerial in nature.
My only question is for this investigative reporter, yes, he may know their names, but does he know their new names?
Does he? How much of an investigative reporter are you, Ross Coulthart?
And it's one thing to say you know him, right? I could say that. I could make, okay, I'm not saying he's doing this. I could make up an agency. I could people it with people in my mind, and I could claim that, you know, the Illuminati are here and the Mormons are here and the Scientologists. I know your names. I know your addresses. I know exactly what you're doing. But don't ask me to say.
Yeah. In some regards, it really shouldn't surprise us that Mormons who love secrecy would be involved in something like this without question.
Right.
Especially the higher up Mormons who, of course, would rather protect a bishop than a child, if you know where I'm leading with that one. So, I mean, who knows how accurate he is, because like they're saying in the chat, we'll name the names and stuff like that. Coulthart kind of has that idea that he gives us more of an impression than actual more information that we can check on. But yeah, that actually in some ways surprises me, but in other ways it really doesn't. Now that I'm thinking about it, Mormons would be involved in something like this simply because they want to protect our government exactly like they want to protect their church priesthood. And so their loyalty is to the brethren, just like their loyalty would be to the secrecy. Don't let the public in on this. So in some regards, that makes sense to me.
I got a question for you, Carrie.
Still not right, in my opinion. I don't agree with that philosophy, but there's not a lot I can do about it.
Right. Question for you, okay? Important question. I think it's a good question. Here's my impression, okay? My impression, and it's been said by people, experts apparently, on this show, which is that governments are keeping the secret.
Right.
They're retrieving, they're hiding, they're lying, they're disinformationing, they're doing all this stuff. And I think that one person said governments plural, right? So he's extending it just beyond just the U.S. government.
Right.
Here's my question. Does this not presume that governments on this planet are superior to aliens who have come from interstellar distances to visit? The reason I say that is because it seems to me that that whole scenario, whereas it's convenient to why it is that we don't have better evidence, right? Why is it? Because it would seem then that for the government to keep all of this on the down low, it means that the UFOs are acting like the government has complete power over how they visit this earth and whom they visit on this earth. Could they not just sit down in the middle of Six Flags over Texas or any other place if they wanted to and said, hey, we're here, and then it's done with? Why is it that the government is the one who always finds them and whisks them away to secrecy? Do you have any explanation for that?
Yes. Well, I have some ideas. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mo. It came to me one night when I was contemplating my seer stone. Is this in a book?
The plain fact is, Untold Stories of Alien Encounters in Mesoamerica, Sky People by Artie Sixkiller Clark and Diane Pasulka, Encounters.
Sixkiller. I remember Sunny Sixkiller.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
The UFOs do not necessarily recognize our demarcation or description or belief in what constitutes government of who is important and who isn't, any more than it identifies and agrees with whose space in the sky is it anyway. For a fact, they have been visiting thousands of people, just not in government.
Right. And there's books and there's all sorts of things.
It's our belief that we are so important that they should show up to our government so that we can know the truth, because the aliens should think that America is the most important nation in the world.
Oh, they can show up in Sweden.
I
don't care, as long as it's some fisherman.
That's
they hang around.
Into account the aliens' point of view. The aliens told Chris Bledsoe, whom he can bring at will to show people. The aliens have told Chris Bledsoe, or the NASA, Jim Semivan of NASA, told Chris Bledsoe, we've known about the aliens for decades, but they don't want anything to do with us. NASA, the UFOs don't want anything to do with NASA. Are you kidding me? Then that must mean all of this is fake. No, that means the UFO doesn't recognize our interpretation of who is the important ones to visit and who isn't. They visited a nobody, Chris Bledsoe. They gave him the ability to call them at any time he wanted. They don't do that with NASA. They don't do that with the private corporation, Skunk Works. They don't do that with Boeing or any of the important major Democrats or Republicans in the U.S. Congress. Does that mean they're fake? No, that means the UFOs are visiting other people whom we don't know.
Can I just say to RFM's favor, he makes the point, though, that they could just stop on the street outside of me, right? And they could announce to an entire neighborhood, hey, we're the aliens, we're here, look at us, we're different than you. And it would be in a matter of seconds, it would be a given that they exist. So
I have asked that same cotton picking question, and I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and I also want to throw out, so I want to say this, it does make sense to me that if they're real, and I want to offer another idea too, but
sure,
if they're real, every country would want to keep it a secret, because you need to figure out that technology first, and any conversation about it in the public arena is helping the other team.
Yep.
So if you're trying to reverse engineer alien technology, it is in your best interest from a security perspective to not talk about it with anyone outside of whoever's working on that, number one. But then there's also this conversation that's happening at large, maybe not at large, but happening within these circles, where there's also this other topic that could possibly be using this story, which is this idea of like a new world order, and all these countries want to come together and build a single solo government. And what's been said is that if that's true, one of the motivations in order to be able to get that accomplished is you have to scare everyone that there's a bigger threat than us fighting each other, that we all need to team up and create a new world order. And hence you have to have an enemy who's bigger than planet Earth. And so there's been some speculation that the government itself is creating the rumors to begin with in order to start the process of scaring all of us in this country and everywhere else into thinking there's a threat outside of this planet, and hence there's a need for a new world order. And so again, this is all speculation. And as we've gone through the night, I think people in the comments are going like, some parts of this episode have been sort of out there. No pun intended. Yeah. But I don't believe the things that we've said because we're sharing the historical record of Mormonism, or because we're sharing what other experts say, or we're sharing what folks in this arena are talking about. Doesn't mean, like, as you pointed out earlier, Carrie, doesn't mean that I believe it. I don't believe that. I do believe in aliens. I do believe some of the stuff that's going on. But I also realize that I could be being tricked into believing them for another reason other than they actually exist. And
exactly. So.
Like my skepticism with Mormonism, I really do need to see evidence before I would make any sort of life decision that would be based on the fact that I choose to believe in a thing for which there is, at this moment, not very strong evidence for.
Not
much.
much.
Mormonism. There's one answer that resolves all the problems.
Yeah, I am so absolutely with you. I'm not trying to pick on anybody in the chat, but apparently there's one gentleman, I won't list his name. He says, in what universe does BYP thinks he understands the aliens? It's absurd. Where in the hell did you get the idea that I'm claiming to understand the aliens? For crying out loud, have you not been listening? All of this is guesswork. I don't have my own experience, but an understanding does come from reading others' experiences. In a way, I understand what Russell M. Nelson, the Mormon prophet, thinks and wants and desires because of what he said and what others have said about him. I'm approaching this the same way. There is not knowledge here. There is an exploration. That's how I look at what we three are doing right now.
There is an exploration. And you said earlier, guesswork is what we're doing and speculating.
Exactly.
So my question then becomes, is it appropriate, do you think, for many ufologists to try and cover this exploration or this guesswork or the speculation with a patina of scientific inquiry?
Yeah, they need to explore it with science, but we now understand that science isn't the only way to explore it. Because now which is weird. I gotta confess, it's weird, but there is a religious element here now.
Yes, there is.
And
challenging someone's belief.
Get out of that.
What happens, and I'm asking you right now, because you know this better than I do, I bet. What happens if you challenge someone's belief or some aspect of a person's belief in UFOs? Is it similar to challenging a person's belief in Mormonism?
Yeah.
The response you get?
It is, yeah.
How so?
Somewhat. They're either offended or, there is as much argument back and forth. There is a UFO apologetics as well as a UFO skepticism. No doubt about that. And it is so parallel to Mormonism in so many ways, in some regards. We don't know enough yet to come to any hard, fast conclusions. And when I say, yeah, I'm going to believe in this thing, but with a caution, I mean, I'm going to believe in this thing while I continue to explore it with as many books as I know how, and watch as many YouTube videos as I can, and read as many scientists, historians, philosophers, and everybody I can get my hands on, so that I can at least have an inkling of a start. And these are just the UFO books, 16 of them, that I've read in the last 3 months. That's not to say all of the videos that I've watched, but that doesn't mean I know a lot. I don't know hardly anything any more than anyone else does. This is why I'm very blessed with this, I suppose, is during this last 4 months of getting on the YouTube bandwagon of trying to share what I'm learning and why I disagree with some evidence and why I think other evidence is decent and all that. I've been blessed to come to this conclusion fairly early on in my investigation. I feel the people's pain and frustration and anger and misery and bah humbug who have been at this for 50 years, and the government's still lying to us. They just lied to us last week. The FAA told Donald Trump, well, it's just our drones. Pure unadulterated bullshit. They said they didn't know whose it was when it was first coming out for the first 3 months. And Donald Trump simply repeated what the FAA said. So, I mean, they're still just buffaloing us. This is why I'm advocating quit waiting on the government. Get you some equipment. Go find out yourself. I mean, if you're that determined. Because let's face it, let's be real. Just because Russell Nelson says, yes, I know Jesus, I've seen him, does that make it real? Are you going to believe him? Now, there are people who do. I don't. But if I really wanted to find out, how would I do it? I would start praying to Jesus and say, hey, man, let's make it.
You're going to get out your binoculars.
I will. That's what I'm doing.
Aim him at Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Just stand outside his house on the sidewalk.
Actually, the UFOs are coming to Hill Air Force Base in Utah a lot. I'm going to go down there and check it out. But no, it's same with the UFOs. I think ultimately it's just going to be a personal thing. And we're just going to have to say, look, there comes a time when we have some work to do ourselves, if you're that determined. But I promise you, Donald Trump could get up tomorrow and tell the nation on a televised program, hey, by the way, the UFOs really are real. We do have some of their craft. We have been reverse engineering them. And yeah, we actually did have some live aliens for a while, and we got a lot of information out of them. I guarantee you there are skeptics out there who still won't believe it. So what makes you think government disclosure is the key to discovering the reality of this? I no longer believe that either.
I don't know, but frequently, and for my own case, diving into Mormonism, doing the deep dive, being into the apologetics, and coming up against brick wall and brick wall and brick wall, there's not really any really good evidence. There's, some stories people tell. I saw this, Jesus talked to me like he was a deer. These kinds of things, right? Or Bigfoot walking along beside me, or God the Father and Jesus Christ appearing to me. But the evidence part is the difficult part. And so it's very common for Mormons to get to the point where they say, okay, well, God does it that way intentionally. There's got to be a reason, right? And God's behind it. So we'll have faith.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It seems like we have a similar situation evidentiary-wise with UFOs. And I wonder, is there any kind of similar theory put forward that the ETs want us to have faith, and that's why they don't give us the evidence that would convince everyone?
Well, I'll tell you what, Diane Pasulka says this whole UFO thing is actually a new religion.
It'll bring you to your knees.
It has become a religion. It's so interesting. And there is faith, and there is witnesses, and, there's claimed evidences, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm recognizing that parallel, and I'm trying hard not to make this just, I saw Dan Vogel earlier say, oh yeah, Carrie's just picked up a new religion. I'm really trying to check my biases, to sincerely attempt to not just, oh yeah, I used to be Mormon and do all these things to stay Mormon, but I have to do the same things to keep believing the UFOs. No, I do not. I'm trying hard to fight my bias because I know it's there. I had it as a Mormon. The same thing is here with this UFO subject. The difference this time is I have been told by people who have done this that the difference here is I can't see the gold plates. The angel Moroni took them back, we are told, if they are real. But I can see and experience the aliens. So that's my next step.
I want to follow that up. RFM,
sure.
RFM, do you think there's better evidence? I'll just go back through these pictures again. Do you think there's better evidence for UFOs in the sense of being, yes, unexplained flying object or whatever, UAP, the aerial phenomenon, but I mean it in the sense of being some species outside of our planet flying things around? Do you think there's better evidence for extraterrestrials flying around in our Earth space, or do you think there's better evidence for Mormonism, the truth claims of the church?
Wow. I thought you were just going to say for God or something easy like that. No. For Mormonism, I'll tell you what, I think it's about the same.
Yeah.
I think it's about the same. If you'll go back to the Tic Tac video.
Yeah, this is sort of spiritualized as well, right? Like you're interpreting it a certain way and someone else sees something else.
Well, look, my son is a F-16 pilot. Okay, retired from the military. Now he flies F-16s in other capacities, okay? It's military adjacent. Anyway, here's the deal. He knows a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff he can't tell me. And he's been very clear to me that there's a lot of stuff he can't tell me, okay? The first thing is that he tells me when I ask about UFOs, he says, look, here's the thing. I can't tell you about all this stuff, okay? But there's a lot of stuff that's up there in the atmosphere and in the sky. That's ours. And by ours, he means our planets. He says people have no idea what we have. Now that goes along with, the reverse engineering idea, but also goes along with the technology idea and trying to, outstrip the other countries that are trying to have this race for space now. The TikTok video, asked him about that. I cannot remember his explanation, and I apologize, but he says, no, that's a totally normal thing, and he explained it to me in a way that's completely rational. So is he telling me the truth and it is completely rational, or is he following the directive that he was given in some secret meeting to explain it away like J. Allen Hynek used to do in the first part of his career?
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I want to throw this back up on the screen. And I just want to note that we late in planning for this show to sort of entertain the audience and have a conversation about the connections between Mormonism and extraterrestrials and UFOs. We build it around this Ross Coulthart, but then late in the game, you, Mr. Radio Free Mormon, came forward with a video of your own that for many would be never before seen footage from almost everyone. There's a few people who might have seen this within the last 24 hours on TikTok. Tell us, RFM, about what we're about to see.
This was recorded by my son, same aforementioned, about 26 hours ago in North Carolina.
And I'll play that now.
What is that? Wow. What is that?
Something entering the atmosphere by the looks of it.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to move over.
We had our binoculars.
Go get them.
There. I'll get them.
You need your binoculars, Carrie.
Yeah, right? Wow. It's a pretty cloudy sky, right? Or is that just a night sky?
I'm not sure. It's early evening, so I don't know if the stars would be out or if we could see them.
It doesn't look like there's any stars, so it might be really cloudy. In that case, that's what's dispersing that light that way. That's a cool video, though. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's wonderful. And the wonder is palpable, right? Because someone's saying, "What is that?" You got the kids saying, "Oh my gosh, what is that?" And
sure,
I
right.
should go get my binoculars.
Oh,
I'll go
that's
get them.
wonderful. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's a UAP.
Well, it is until you find out that it's a SpaceX rocket.
Right. Yeah, something like that.
See,
Yeah.
there's Randall Bell, PhD. If you can leave that comment up there.
Yeah, SpaceX launch.
I
Yeah.
sent it to Randy. And
Randy.
he sent me right back
Thank you, Randy.
the
Yeah.
same launch of this same thing. Now, this is North Carolina. I'm assuming it's heading north.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Because he's down. And now I think Randy's in Georgia and he filmed it.
Yeah.
And of course, it was earlier in the day. Not
Uh-huh.
much. But I saw almost the takeoff, but just past the takeoff and for quite a bit in a late afternoon sky,
Uh-huh.
which I think was probably just maybe half an hour, maybe less than that prior to this sighting.
Yeah.
And I'll just say about this, when I first saw it, my first thought was it's a meteorite. That's what I thought.
Uh-huh.
I think when you don't have a better explanation for things, you are prone to guess at what it is, and whatever your guess is seems reasonable to you
Right.
until you have a better explanation for things. And I think much of the conversation around aliens, not necessarily all of it, like I said, I'm a skeptic at heart.
Sure.
I'm not sold in any one direction. I lean a little bit towards the aliens being true. But I sit back and I watch, and it doesn't affect my life because I wouldn't invest that much in it until solid evidence came forward. I think often in this alien UFO sort of discussion, there are all these images, and it's simply a matter that we can't explain it. The angle of whatever that is, it looks like a saucer with a tail, but maybe we're seeing a certain perspective of whatever that object is. And if it was 30 degrees rotated, we'd go, "Oh, that's what it is. That makes sense." It's often not knowing something. Again, triangle of some sort, not the crosshairs, but whatever that is that's in them. Whatever that is, some orb or blip in the sky
Or cloud.
That could be a giant kite or balloon. It could be any of those kinds of things. We're prone to explain things based on what our best explanation is from within our own head. And I don't know how many times in my life I've had somebody say they thought something only to research it for a moment, find a much better answer, and then that explained it way better.
And this is what these UFOs are in the sense that it says unidentified flying objects. Now it's unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's all unidentified, which means anything that you see, you match up to all the things that you know of that it could be.
Yeah.
And if the things that you know of, looks totally fake. That looks like Battlestar Galactica from the 70s.
Yeah,
That's so bad.
Really.
But you match them up against the things it could be or could guess it could be. And if it doesn't fall within any of those things, then it's a UFO. And from there, we have a very, very strong tendency to jump to alien life form.
Yes. Yeah, that's our bias. And that's the one. And I keep confusing that too. There's times when I say, yeah, now that looked like a UFO to me. And people came back at me and said, "Oh, come on, BYP, you can't believe alien life is," and I go, "Oh yeah, I see what you're thinking now. I did assume that, and no, you're right." So we got to be careful with our terminology, and I'm speaking to myself. But now, by the way, go back to that last one, Bill, if you would, please, kindly. Yeah, I understand, with my meager understanding here of all of this, that we have made craft that are big and triangular as well now. We actually do have reversed engineers craft like that. So you say UFO, well, it's certainly not a 747, right? I mean, it's a triangle with a bunch of white dots that are glowing, or lights and all. Technically, that's a UFO, but that actually might be man-made.
Can I just say too, like, for instance, this one here
that might be man-made too.
let me just put something up on the screen. That looks like a lot like something like that, right?
Exactly. Thank you. That's an
So
excellent.
you can see there's two of them. You can see the outline of these two things that
flying
light
side
to the
by
bottom.
side.
You can also see the stars through them.
Trevor, of course, I am very motivated to find this true. That shouldn't
That's what I
worry,
pointed out.
because I'm not using all the evidence to verify that it's true, I'm exploring all the evidence from all directions and testing the probabilities. But I do appreciate your concern. Truly, it's a legit concern, because the last thing I want to do is pull a Kerry Mulstein where he says, I believe the book of Abraham's true, and I find all the evidence that confirms that. If that's your worry, it's legit, and I'm trying hard to fight my own bias so I don't do that.
I know you don't want to pull a Kerry Mulstein. On the other hand, you're already halfway there.
I'm halfway there.
Yeah, true. The video you had, which, do we have it confirmed that is a SpaceX launch? Is that what, do we know that for sure?
Yeah.
RFM? Yeah. So I just noticed, like, I found this when I was doing research to try to find something similar. The Sazelberg incident, 1993, sort of the same kind of a look where it's sort of fanning off to the sides. But I think meteors can explain these kinds of things. And meteors kind of have that same sort of look where they're burning, and as they burn, they're sort of fanning off sort of a light or something as behind them and off to the sides. But my 2 cents is, when you see things, you can also keep looking and ask better questions, look up to see if anything else explains it. And even if you can't explain it in a better way, I think there's a place to sort of hesitate from a full on going in on that it has to be a UFO, it has to be an extraterrestrial.
Yeah, how much you want to come to a conclusion? That's what Gary Nolan says. He says, we're not after hard, fast conclusions. That stops the questioning and the investigation. We want to just acknowledge, well, that's different than what I thought it would have been, or whatever. So, yeah.
Wouldn't that be crazy? You got the pictures of the two little grays up there. Wouldn't that be crazy if that's what Heavenly Father and Jesus really looked like?
Yeah. And
yeah,
I do have one more video I want to play, and then I'll let you close us out, RFM.
Are we going to take any calls?
Yeah. But if anything else you want to say for the end of the actual show portion. But I thought this was interesting, and at least adds something to this conversation.
UFOs? Any UFOs? Did you ask about that?
Certainly asked about it.
And?
Can't tell you. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. What the hell do you mean, okay? What do you mean, okay?
Because
you
they
can't
didn't
tell us
let him
about
in.
it?
They didn't let him in on it because he's only the president of the United States. They're not read into the programs anymore.
Well, he says I can't tell you about it. Which,
he can't tell you about it because
he knows something.
No.
Well,
Well,
I would follow up with, are you saying that you know something about the UFOs that you cannot tell the public?
That's what a good lawyer would do, RFM.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what a good lawyer would do. The interviewer just said, oh, okay.
Oh, that's a good point. All right.
He didn't quite nail it down.
Yep.
Because what Obama said there is subject to different interpretations, I think. I mean, I know the one that people who
he actually in one interview said, I'm told I can't tell you. And he is.
Okay, Carrie, ask me if I've ever seen an alien, okay? Just ask me right now.
Have you ever seen an alien, RFM?
I have been instructed not to share my most sacred experiences.
Yeah.
Is that what Obama did?
Yeah, that needs a follow-up question, because
that's what Obama did. Okay, so everybody knows that leaders of this church, the Mormon Church, the apostles, there's 15 of them. Don't ask me why, it's a long story, but there's 15, okay? 12 plus 3 apostles, all of whom are reputed to have seen Jesus, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't see Jesus, but they are directed to say, when they're asked, have you seen Jesus? Because everybody believes they've seen Jesus.
Right.
Within the Mormon Church, the TBMs, when they're asked, if they should ever be asked, they have been, what their response is rote. Their response is, I have been directed not to share my most sacred experiences.
Right. Which is
total
opposite of an
apostle. It's total bullshit.
Yeah.
It is something that's it could be technically true, but it's designed to make you think that you have seen Jesus, that they have seen Jesus when they haven't seen Jesus, without saying.
Plausible deniability.
Yeah, they're trying to get people to still believe it.
Or deniable plausibility, Bill.
Oh, yeah, that's Stephen Colbert, right. Yeah, interviewing is not his forte.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, right. No, that's a good point. That's legit. Yeah, and someone just said they're very concerned that I'm speculating. You don't say.
Well, when you say you're speculating, I think it's okay to say you're speculating.
You have to. That's what we're doing. I'm just
Right.
being real. Yeah, it's all speculation until you get your own experience.
We do have a phone call, so I'll let you sort of finish up wrapping up this, but I just want to say the phone lines are open 662-667-6667 or 662 Mormons. And I also put the link in the live chat if you wanted to come in studio to have the conversation with us. I'll let you, any closing thoughts there, RFM?
Great. So let's grab some phone calls and let's hear what the questions are for our guest.
All right, Tim Rathbone. Hopefully I can hear you. Are you there, my friend? Hello, Tim. Okay, this happens every time. So let's try this again.
Tim is our remote viewer. Once you get him on, I'm going to be asking him what color underwear I'm wearing.
Yes, Tim, are you there?
Bill?
Yes, sir. We got you. Tim, what color underwear is RFM wearing?
And it's not as easy as it used to be when I
He's
was
not wearing any underwear. That's a trick question.
Pink. He says pink. Remote viewed pink, RFM.
Did you say pink, Tim? Are you being serious? You're kidding around.
I said think. Yes, I did. I said think.
Okay, I'd have to check it.
Sure, why not?
But it's not pink. I don't have any pink underwear. If I did, I sure as hell wouldn't say it publicly.
Okay, guys.
What do you have for us, Tim?
Mormon UFO files.
Well, you need to get in touch with Maurice Campbell. He's on Facebook.
Put me in touch with Maurice Campbell.
Who's this? You said it's a Mormon?
Facebook. You can send him a message. He was a Mormon. He told me stories about he had a brother, I think, that was killed because of UFOs and zero-point technology.
Ooh.
And the churches invested in it, but they were never allowed to go to the church office building to talk to the leaders about it. I've got text messages.
Wait a second. He went to the office building and talked to like apostles about this?
Yes, that's what he has shared stories with me about that.
Has he given you the names of the apostles?
No.
Why do people always protect these guys?
Yeah. Good question.
Hey, Tim, on Facebook,
Yes.
I don't want to out the guy or dox him or put him up on the screen or anything like that, but I'm looking at a Maurice Campbell. This is an older gentleman, maybe in his 70s or 80s. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I will.
Yep. He's in Jackson Hole.
I mean, I'm not Facebook friends with him, so he may not even see my message. Are you able to maybe get him a message? I'd love to have a conversation and see if there's something to follow up on.
I can.
Yeah,
I
please.
can. I messaged him the other day, but he hasn't asked me back. But we had interesting conversations about the church and UFOs.
Yeah, if there's enough there to be interesting, I'd at least pursue a conversation. So,
how about you in live chat chiming in and letting us know whether you want to see any more of this or if you'd be interested in it or not as well?
yeah, please let us know.
Okay.
And anything else, Tim? What else do you want to say about Maurice or anything else going on with aliens and UFOs and maybe remote viewing?
Well, let's talk about aviation first. Okay, I was raised in a family. My father was a pilot and an engineer. He was an aeronautical engineer. And we talked about UFOs a lot. And we were flying one time and we saw an orb appear and fly across the front of our airplane and disappear. It was a silverish orb. My dad and I saw it at the same time. We both looked at each other and said, "Did you see what I just saw?" So that was back in the 60s or the 70s.
Was that day or night?
And then when I went, it was day. I think we're going to the desert. We used to fly sailplanes out at El Mirage and Elsinore. I think it was one of those flights. And then when I went to work for Lockheed, and Bob Lazar, there was a gentleman named Dick Ertman, and Dick had been at Lockheed for years. And he and I would talk about UFOs and stuff. He also worked for the CIA. He told me some really interesting stories. But when Bob Lazar went on Coast to Coast that Saturday night, I walked into to Dick's office Monday morning, and he says, I know what you're going to ask me. He said, shut the door. And I closed the door. And he said, everything Bob Lazar said is true. I've been to Area 51. I know what he's talking about. I said, okay, that's all you have to say. So from the mid-'80s on, I have known, even though I have my doubts, just like Carrie does and just like everybody else does, that they're real, that something is going on.
Well, Tim, I thought that CIA agents, I thought the one thing they were not supposed to do was to tell interesting stories.
Well, Lockheed and the CIA have a very, very close relationship. A lot of people I worked with at Lockheed were also CIA agents. The Air Force, the CIA, and Lockheed have a very tight relationship. I heard so many stories about things people did, and my supervisor would one day fly for the Air Force, and the next he'd be flying drugs for the CIA all around the Golden Triangle in Southeast Asia when he was there. He says, yeah, some days I'd be flying for the Air Force delivering stuff, and other days I'd be flying CIA with the C-130 was full of drugs that we were flying all around the Golden Triangle. That's just some examples. There are a lot of stories.
Wow.
I could tell you.
Is that like the Bermuda Triangle?
It's like the
from the Golden Triangle, from Vietnam to the Philippines and down to Indonesia and back, kind of that area.
Oh, okay, got it.
And when I was at Lucky, we did have a skiff. Okay, it was a room that we held top secret briefings in. And I can tell you the room is a Faraday cage. It has double doors. It's soundproofed. And it had, the room we had 4 microphones hanging from the ceiling, and it recorded. Every meeting we had in there was recorded. And
what were you meeting about?
Well, back then, the project I was working on was a P3 program. It was a P3 Orion that was stuffed with all kinds of electronic equipment. It was a intelligence. It was a gatherer. They gathered intelligence with it.
What intelligence are they gathering? I'm sorry, I'm not following you. What's going on in this room with these meetings?
Electronic intelligence and photographic intelligence. I think there's this big camera that could see for miles. They would fly along the border of Russia or China, and they could see like 100 miles in with this camera, with a really big camera. And they could take pictures of stuff very far away.
This is mounted on an airplane?
Yes. Yes.
How is that relevant to what you were talking about? Please explain.
Well, I'm just telling you about my experiences.
And I was hoping to hear about it. So what did you do in this room with the 4 microphones hanging down?
We talked about that program there. They showed videos of some of the stuff that they could photograph, really close-up photographs of ships and things, Russian naval vessels. And one photograph where they came up and tried to get the airplane to get off its course. You've heard about the intrusions when the Russians or the Chinese come up and they do like a barrel roll over an airplane, you know, like they're on a reconnaissance mission, and they'll come up and
I saw Top Gun, yes.
This is better than Top Gun.
Well, that's upside down, man. Okay, but anyway.
I just want to jump in here really quick. I'm going to put a little survey into the chat. Did you enjoy the episode? Folks, whether you're watching live or whether you watch this afterward, I'll also put it in the YouTube description. I'd love to get feedback if you liked something like this, if this was something worth doing every once in a while, and would love the feedback. So there's a survey in the live chat. I just put it out there now.
Very good.
Okay. I think everybody should listen to, there's a guy named Professor Simon who has a YouTube channel. And
he looks like Einstein. The wild hair.
Yes.
Yeah, he's fun.
Yes.
He's interesting. He's
And he talks
controversial.
Yeah, he does some UFO stuff. He just this morning he dropped another one.
Oh,
And
cool.
Cliff High and Future Forecasting Remote Viewing Group. I don't put too much stock in Courtney Brown or Bob Lazar. Maurice Campbell works with Bob Lazar, and Maurice sent me a photograph of a 0-point technology device. I'll have to find that. I'll send it to you guys in chat.
Great. So Tim and Carrie, I just got a question. You can weigh in on this too, Bill. Presumably these guys, these cats from outer space, from across the galaxy, they've got a lot of technology, probably superior to ours, which is why we want to reverse engineer it, right? Why are they always running into things?
Oh,
Why are they always crashing into planets, specifically
question.
ours?
well,
It's like they're driving, they're always hammered or something. They're drunk all the time. They keep
Not
running
all
into
the
things.
not all the time. But yeah,
Well, apparently quite a bit.
I honestly don't know.
And
But
they don't wear their seatbelts.
there's no guarantee that the planet they're from is the exact same size and gravitational influence of Earth.
But you figured they would
they
take that into
always-
account, probably.
They aren't always crashing in things. Oh,
I mean,
but
we take into account the fact the moon is a different diameter and size when we send people up there, right? And orbit around it. I would think maybe they might do the same thing before they come to Earth. Just guessing.
good point.
But it's like they go bam right into it every time. What is that about? They're like birds flying into a window.
I don't know.
Well, if you believe Bob Lazar, it's according to radar that they go down because of radar.
Right. And that's what I was
Yeah,
talking with
they
Carrie
don't-
about. So these aliens, they've never had radar in the course of their entire evolution to get to interstellar travel. They've never encountered radar. They never developed radar. They didn't have any bats on their planet. They didn't have any whales. They didn't have any porpoises, no dolphins on their planet, no radar. They come
We
into
don't
the
know
atmosphere,
that.
radar hits them, bam, right? They go crashing into something.
We don't know that though.
But that's what the suggestion, isn't it? That it was the radar.
Well,
that
they
monkeyed
also-
with
Yeah,
it,
the radar. Yes. Yeah.
And so they hit the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
And
No.
according to Bob Lazar, I think he also claims that nuclear detonations do something to disrupt time and space that
The
affect
electricity and
their
yeah.
balloon loops.
Yeah.
Or
And you know
they're
something? There was this
something like
huge earthquake. There was this huge earthquake in the Americas that ended up changing the geography such that the Book of Mormon doesn't match the geography today after the big earthquake.
Yeah.
There's always explanations for this stuff.
There is. Yeah. Part of it drives you crazy, doesn't it?
You know that one, don't you, Tim, about the big earthquake that happened when Jesus came? It wasn't just a regular earthquake. It actually
Right.
changed the shape of the continents over here.
Oh, it changed the continent, right?
Yeah. You've heard that one, right?
And there's no evidence for it
No.
anywhere.
That would be a big effing earthquake.
How does the nuclear detonation disrupt time and space, Tim?
Did you really say nuclear?
I don't know, Bob. I think it's Lazar, not Lazar. Greer. I think Greer talks about that some way. That's supposed to disrupt.
I don't get how it disrupts time.
Now we're apologizing for the aliens who can't drive straight. They can't fly straight, you know? So it's like apologists for God for the problem of evil. And now we're apologizing for the aliens for running into everything.
Someone's got to defend them, RFM.
And they're not wearing their seatbelts because they go right through the
not
front
wearing the
windshield.
seatbelt.
They're lying on the ground with their bodies fully exposed because they
I'm
don't even have freaking helmets on, right? They
That
got no
just
protective
blows
gear,
me
not
away.
even a leather jacket that zips up in front so they can look cool when they're going from planet to planet.
They don't even have any cool military patches on their clothes.
Yeah, I know. It just seems, I don't know. It seems kind of unlikely.
Drunk aliens need to be prosecuted. I love it.
Yeah, the speed of light, it's a law we can live
Those
with.
human factors are not up to human factors. How's that?
That'll work.
It's always the fault of the Mormons, isn't it?
It is. Those doggone.
It's always the human factors.
Bless
Never
them.
the alien factors. We can't blame them. They're sacrosanct. Geoplanet Jane says, RFM, we do not know the answers to the questions you are asking, or maybe you do and you just don't want to grab.
She's keeping it secret. Come on, Jane. Quit keeping
I
it secret.
tell you, Jane.
Oh my
advice-
word. I'm having
your
too much fun now.
Your advice to the aliens RFM is the same as you would to the rest of us. If you're interacting with law enforcement, don't say anything.
Yes, they were shot down, Jane. That's the idea. Yeah, that's what Corso says.
How the hell did they get shot
Of course,
down? By,
Greer.
how
radar?
the hell did these
By
guys
the
get shot
radar.
down by Earth airplanes?
By the radar. The radar disrupts their ability to fly in our atmosphere. John Corso talked about it.
Okay.
I don't know the full
The
details.
radar and also the scalar weapons also, supposedly.
The what weapons?
The scale of it.
Oh, the
It was
scalar
a
weapons.
very strong, yeah. It was a very strong radar.
So this is
Hold
a
on.
big radar gun.
They did, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing that they were able to get a bead on him long enough to knock him out of the sky and force him down.
They didn't have to because the radar apparently, if I remember right, don't quote me on this, but it could
I
have
won't
been
believe me.
a very wide beam of radar. I don't know if that's exactly
Yeah.
right, but because
And
I
those-
think they
And
were
they flew
discussing,
right through it. Those extraterrestrials fell right into our trap.
they fell right into our trap. Isn't that convenient?
Well, thank
Well,
you.
anyway, are there any other callers? By the way, Tim, are you still there?
What's that, Tim?
Can we talk about remote viewing now?
Can we do that Friday?
Yeah, call Mormonism After Dark.
Let's
Okay.
do Mormonism After
All
Dark.
right,
Let's
I'll
have
talk
all
about
of our
it Friday.
remote viewing stories.
I love it.
Everybody can call in with their remote viewing
Okay.
stories.
And you can remote view if I'll
All
take
right.
that call. Okay.
And I'm going to be holding you to it. So I want you to work out. I want you to rest up. I want you to be ready because I'm going to be wearing a very special set of underwear on Friday, Tim. And I'm going to be asking you to name what the color is. Okay.
And until you get it right, Tim,
I need
no one trusts this stuff. You got to get it right. You claim remote viewing is true. You got to get the underwear color right. You have to tell RFM's underwear color. And RFM, don't wear the tighty whities.
No.
Don't
And I've
do
got some crazy colored underwear too. So it's going to be a challenge.
Don't wear the loosey
it'll
goosey.
be black.
Some of it's actually almost like neon, fluorescent in color, such that if I drop my pants, you'd be able to see it.
Oh, I
from-
like that.
And Tim, Mosiah said no remote peeking beforehand, Tim.
'cause it's against the law of chastity.
Oh boy, oh
Boy,
boy.
I hope there's no other callers. Are there any other callers?
There is one more caller. Tim, I'm going to let you go. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, Tim.
Take care, guys.
All right, I'm going to suspend all new calls. We have 2 calls in the queue. So this is Keenan, I believe. Keenan, you are on Mormonism Live, the Mormon UFO files, top secret Mormon UFO files. What's your comment, my friend?
Yeah, I would say, having grown up in Mormonism and having left it behind, I think leaving Mormonism has made me more of a skeptic than I've ever been, which is something a lot of people experience. But I wanted to point a few things out that I find is that these kind of accounts and stories have in common with the types of accounts and stories that we all heard growing up, or those who spent some time being Mormon. One is, so serious people can take very silly things very seriously. So the thing that came to mind for me was when, I think it was President Kimball who asked someone working within the church to see if he could get the sear stone working again. And that shocked me because the way that account was shared was that he was sincere, 100%. 100 and some odd years after Joseph Smith claimed to have used the sear stone, he believed that this thing could be turned back on. And it's just that shocked me, but it kind of reminded me that very serious people we respect and that we trust, can believe in some really silly things. I do myself. Like we've all been guilty of that. Another one that I thought of as I was listening to this is I've worked in large companies, large corporations, and tech companies, and I've noticed that a lot of these organizations develop a very intense bias towards secrecy, and sometimes that bias is absolutely absurd. We would have secret names for projects, and we would be really careful about sharing things that could in no way be problematic if they got out. And so I imagine some of this stuff that gets classified and whispered around the halls of government institutions as secrets is absolutely mundane. But one thing where they've spent years trying to understand why one UFO or one identified object, they can't understand it. Another thing ends up being a Mylar balloon. And from an institutional perspective, you kind of have to treat both publicly, how you talk about it, as absolute top secret. These things cannot be shared. So that was another thing where I thought, just because these people protect these secrets and they take it very seriously and they come out and they say, I'm risking my life to share this stuff, doesn't mean that it's significant. There's a lot of very serious but insignificant secrets out there. And then the last thought I had is about the just looking years after my Mormon experience objectively at the story of Mormonism. I find it absolutely uninteresting and unimaginative from a theological and philosophical perspective and from a moral perspective. It's not that interesting. It's kind of fun. Like there's this whole mythology about this fake people that lived in the Americas and all this kind of stuff, but it's not very interesting. It's like Pulp Fiction. And so one of the things that has made me very skeptical of UFO type stuff is reading really good sci-fi, because really good sci-fi can explore what worlds and other intelligences could be like that are so far beyond our frame of reference. And so when I look at a lot of these extraterrestrial accounts, it's just, they're short, their skin's gray. It's just, there's always one detail that's a single step away from what we know today. Their aircraft are just like stealth bombers, but they can move sideways. There's always it's just so close to what's in our grasp of understanding. And I think we do that because we believe, if I knew a little bit more, I could understand this. But a good example that I get from sci-fi is, if you're familiar with the movie Arrival, which is based on a short story called Stories of My Life. That is all about what it would be like to encounter an intelligence that understands and experiences time, and therefore their language as a representation of that is completely foreign to us. And so that's where I see like Joseph Smith as a Pulp Fiction writer, like he's writing this fun story, but then not a very imaginative one. And what I would want to see or expect to see out of these kinds of accounts, even coming from these government officials who claim they know something, is things that are truly incomprehensible, things that are truly strange, not things that feel 20 years away from our understanding. So that's kind of my rant. I don't mean to put it to be a skeptic, because the one thing we'll say is, I think as long as this stuff is never used the way Mormonism is, to manipulate or control or coerce people to do things, I think a wide open curiosity and discussion is fun and interesting. And I would love to be wrong, and I'd love to meet little gray men. But once power starts getting involved, once people have claimed to have special access to special knowledge, my alarm bells start going off. And that's where I get a little bit worried when I hear this stuff.
Well, Keenan, all I can say is, every party needs a pooper. That's why we invited you. Party pooper. Party pooper.
All right.
Party pooper.
I take it all back.
Get to the chopper.
I appreciate it, Keenan. But we do get again, I don't think it hurts to be skeptical. I think being skeptical will benefit you better in this life than believing things where the evidence is lacking.
Yeah. The other thing is this. You had mentioned something about, it seems that a lot of times UFO reports are just a step away from what our modern technology can do, right? In other words, it has the imprints of what it is we can do on it, just taken up a notch, as opposed to being something completely different, unrelated to what we have been able to accomplish in any way. I think that going along with that, you correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Both Keenan or Backyard Professor, or anybody out there. My understanding from studying this phenomenon in some depth 25 years ago is that back in the earliest part of the 20th century and the latter part of the 19th century, there were UFO sightings at the time, except then they weren't discs or saucers or any of the other things that we're accustomed to. They were actually flying, sailing ships with rigging that people reported going through the sky.
Mhm.
I mean, just like out of Peter Pan and Captain Hook ship, right? Flying through the sky. That's what UFOs were, I believe, at the time. And it was very much a reflection of the state of technology at the time. Am I correct about this so far, Backyard Professor, about the sightings of the ships?
Yes.
The rigging, the actual sailing ships in the sky.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Richard Dolan talks about that in his book, 21st Century Mind. Yep.
Right. Then you go through World War II, you got the Foo Fighters.
Yeah, the Foo Fighters. Yeah.
That's some great
And
music.
you've got the flying shields of the Hopis.
Yeah. And now today, like you said, in a lot of cases, what we see is our technology just cranked up one notch.
Yeah. Interesting, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Fun
Yeah.
to keep in
Like
mind.
another analog to this kind of thing is I'm 40 now, and I'm starting to get floaters, which I understand is kind of a form of macular degeneration that happens slowly with age. And once in a while, I catch a view of some shapes that kind of float in the sky. But I imagine 1,000 years ago, people whose eyesight started to go and they started to see floaters and they would look in the sky, might have ascribed some really interesting and wild supernatural phenomena to that. And so similarly, I think in this regard, I do believe that there are phenomena that people experience. Some of it might be purely psychological, and some of it might be natural. But just in the same way that I'm hesitant to say that if there is a greater being that has some kind of influence in the universe, that he has a beard and dresses in a robe. In the same way, I'm also hesitant to say that these people are just like us, but a little bit smaller, and they don't know how to fly shit very well. Like, and that's my skepticism. But I do think it's fun, and I enjoy I also highly recommend a lot of the more recent and interesting sci-fi that explores those ideas. A lot of people may have seen Three Body Problem, which is a show recently. I don't know if the show's quite that good, but the books are incredible and really explore the idea of a far-flung future for humanity that would encounter extraterrestrial life, and philosophically how that could happen, what it would mean, in a way that's much more imaginative than Joseph Smith or Bob Lazar.
Well, thank you, Keenan. I'm gonna let you go so we can grab the last call and
Yes.
your show.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night, Keenan.
I get
Keenan
floaters
definitely came to
too.
the right place because we all float down here.
I was gonna say I get floaters too, but it's usually after drinking after the grandchildren. So let's pick up the last call here. This is Chekhov.
I thought it was after a heavy dinner and a swim in the pool.
Well, that happens. That's happened once or twice too. So they had to close that pool down. All right, Chekhov, you're on Mormonism Live, and it's the top secret UFO files. So what is your thoughts on tonight's episode?
It was a great episode, guys. It was very entertaining. And I was, remember when I kind of read this book, I said kind of read because I started, never finished, the Kolob theorem, I think it's called in English.
A theorem?
Where talk, yeah, Kolob theorem, something like that. And it talks about God living in the center of the galaxy.
The God
Like,
theorem. It was a
black
book
hole.
and a proposal by a Mormon who wrote a book about it, right?
Yeah. And well, he said that the closest part to the center of the black hole was like that celestial kingdom, and then terrestrial and celestial. It was crazy.
That's why God loses so much shit. He lives in a black hole. And the church does the same thing. They lose a lot of shit too.
Yeah.
They're trying to be
Yeah.
like Jesus.
But the way I reasoned this when I read that was like, when I was a Mormon fanatic, I was like, yeah, of course he lives in a black hole because, the singularity, everything is there and he can see everything. It was kind of crazy. Yeah.
You know what
But
the
I really
constellation-
enjoyed this episode. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Chekhov. Go ahead.
Sorry. No. You go.
I was just going to ask, Do you know where the constellation the Pleiades is?
Pleiades. I've heard about it. I don't know exactly where it is. If I look at the sky, I cannot see it. I
Yeah,
don't know
it's
how
a
to read
cluster of
stars.
7 stars that are tight, small cluster of 7 stars that are visible to the human eye.
Yeah.
And the 7 sisters, right? The Pleiades. My understanding is that if you look at the Pleiades, and they're just off of Taurus and Aldebaran, the bright red star in Taurus. If you look at Pleiades, you're pretty much looking at the center of the galaxy. I think that I remember. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I thought
that's the direction that the center of our galaxy is. If you look at the Pleiades. Of course, that'll change in another million years, but for now, anyway.
Not that long.
Even in a secular way, I mean, the creative energy of the universe emanated from that place. That really is the beginning point of God and all that's connected to it, even if you define God as just a unconscious creative energy of the universe. So there's some truth to that, even outside of a religious perspective.
I think it's the Sumerian culture that also has that Pleiades thing.
The Sumerians?
I can't remember. Yeah, the Sumerians. Yeah.
It's like Gozer the Gozerian?
I might be wrong. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I followed this dude. Yeah, no, I followed this dude. Like, he's a Spaniard dude. I mean, he's from Spain. Sorry. And he talks about this, and he like 11 years ago, he was doing like shows talking about remote vision. I didn't really pay attention to that. I'm not sure what it is. But
sitting in one place and being able to see crap that's happening on the moon. In other words, by the power of your mind, Horatio, you can see things that are not happening within your normal vision. You are the one who is remote, or you're viewing things that are remote. Anyway, the viewing and the remoteness are together. And you're seeing stuff that's super remote. It could be on the other side of the freaking galaxy.
Yeah.
If you're good.
Wow.
That's gold medal remote viewing.
Good. If you're good.
Some people can't even tell the color
these things.
Thank you,
That
Chekhov,
sounds
for the
like
call.
drinking ayahuasca.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, okay, guys.
Yeah.
Oh,
Bill knows
can
about that.
I
I
say
don't.
one more thing before I go?
Remote viewing's got nothing on ayahuasca, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah, I was just joking. Since we're talking about this supernatural thing, maybe this could be an idea for another episode about, supernatural thing in Mormonism. Because I know Catholics, they have a lot of exorcism things. Do Mormons have those? Because I haven't heard any of those.
We don't have any exorcism ritual per se. You just got to raise your right hand. If you got the priesthood, say the right words, and they're out of there.
Okay.
Hey, Chekhov, you're a Mormon, or used to be, right?
Well, I still am, because I haven't taken my papers out, and my whole family is a member.
Okay.
So I'm hiding in the shadows.
But just asking, so you raise your right hand to the square. If you got the Melchizedek priesthood, Chekhov, do you still have the Melchizedek priesthood?
Yes. Yeah.
Raise your right hand to the square, and you say the magic words. Right?
Yeah.
In the name of Jesus Christ, and by the authority of the holy Melchizedek priesthood, which I hold, I command you to get the hell out of here. And that's all you got to do. Sometimes if they're really tough, you got to fast a little bit before that. But otherwise, you got control.
And because he said it, Chekhov, I have to let you go. So thanks for the call, my friend.
No, thank you, guys.
Take it easy.
Hey, Chekhov, I was going to do my Chekhov impression. It goes like this. The ship, Captain, it vanished. Not bad, huh?
Am I supposed to be closing the exit right there?
It vanished.
Yeah, we're out of here.
Apparently, Russians have trouble saying their V's. That's the whole deal.
No, no,
Okay.
no.
Anyway, hey, Carrie, do you have anything you want to say? By the way, this is the time to talk about your channel for 60 seconds and where people can find you and when your next show is and all that good stuff.
Oh, just look up Backyard Professor on YouTube. I usually make a video a day, and then I have my Sunday live on Sundays evening, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And
okay, great.
If I don't get a video made every day, I try to get it. I get 4 or 5 made each week. So yeah, I'm relatively easy to find. Just type in The Backyard Professor, and my funny looking face will show up, and bam, you're there.
And your channel has grown like crazy in the last few months. So, folks, please check it out. Check out the Backyard Professor.
It has.
Yes, please do.
Been a lot of
Thank you
fun.
for joining us tonight, Carrie. Thank you, Bill Reel. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's been a fascinating discussion. I can hardly wait to get home and review the 3 hours plus of live chat on this baby, because I think it's going to be fun. Please join us, Nick. Oh, I'm sorry. What?
75% of people liked it.
Nice.
That's so funny. What I hear is 25% of people hated it.
Yeah, I know. That's you're a pessimistically optimistic. So
Yeah, when it comes to me, absolutely. I'm a glass half empty kind of guy when it comes to me. I'm a glass half full guy when it comes to everybody else. I'm sorry, Backyard.
That means 75% had faith in the show and only 25% were skeptical. So that's
or maybe they have good taste. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. But thank you anyway. And thank you, everybody. Join us next week for another episode of Mormonism Live next Wednesday at 6:20 p.m. Mountain Time. Good night, everybody.